Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lynn Keel. Rexford Lynn Keel, commonly known as Lynn Keel, was married to Elizabeth Bess Edwards Keel for more than 20 years. In 2005, Lynn was a truck driver, while Elizabeth worked at Microbac Laboratories. Lynn and Elizabeth lived in a remote house in Nash County, North Carolina. As 2005 ended, they, like many others, were preparing for the new year. However, on January 1, 2006, an unfortunate event occurred. It was a cold day, and the steps outside their house were icy. When Elizabeth stepped outside, she slipped and fell, striking her head on the concrete steps. The injury was severe and ultimately fatal. The medical examiner determined that Elizabeth died from blunt force trauma to the head, and her death was classified as an accident. Elizabeth's sudden death at the age of 42 shocked her husband, relatives, colleagues, and friends. A year later, Lynn Keel decided to move forward with his life. He transitioned from being a truck driver to working in real estate. In 2007, during a work trip to Latin America, Lynn, who was 45 at the time, met Diana, who was 19 years younger than him. Diana, a single mother from Bogota, Colombia, was not only beautiful but also kind. Their relationship blossomed quickly, and inspired by the idea of the American dream, Diana moved to the United States. Diana and Lynn moved into his home in Nash County, where his wife, Elizabeth Keel, had tragically passed away in an accident about a year earlier. Soon after, Diana and Lynn got married, and shortly afterward, they welcomed a son named Max. In 2017, Diana graduated from Nash Community College and started working as an emergency room nurse at Wilson Medical Center. The initial years of their marriage were unremarkable, but over time, their relationship began to decline. Diana confided in her close friend that Lynn was a controlling man who often spoke to her harshly and verbally abused her. The atmosphere in their home was consistently tense. Lynn wouldn't allow Diana to spend extended time alone with anyone. Although she started considering divorce, she felt scared of her husband due to his threats. He used their baby as a means of manipulation, warning her that if she left, he would deport her and she would never see her son again. Diana endured this situation for the sake of her children, but she knew that she also has the limits. In 2019, Diana's daughter from her previous marriage, Laura, was 18 years old. She had graduated from Southern Nash High School and was starting her freshman year at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. Meanwhile, 10-year-old Max was living with his parents. Diana worked as a nurse at Wilson Medical Center, where she was well loved and respected by both her patients and colleagues. On March 7, 2019, Diana's mother, Esperanza Prada, who lived in Colombia, received an unexpected message from Diana that said, "Mom, I love you very much." Esperanza was aware that Diana was unhappy in her marriage and wanted to get a divorce, but she also knew that Diana was afraid of her husband. 3 days later, Laura, Diana's daughter, raised the alarm. On March 10th, she sent out a tweet asking for help to locate her mother. The tweet read, "This is unbelievable. You always see this happen to others and never think it could happen to you. My mom is missing. If you have any information, please let me know and retweet this to help spread the word. Thank you." On the same day, Laura contacted the medical center where her mother worked, but none of Diana's colleagues had seen or heard from her in the last 2 days. An employee at the medical center requested a welfare check on Diana after not hearing from her for days. She told that Diana was supposed to work that night and usually arrive 30 minutes early. She normally responded quickly to texts, but this time she hadn't replied. The nurse noted that this was unusual behavior for Diana, which led her to contact the sheriff's office for a welfare check. Diana was a devoted mother who communicated with her family every day, actively engaged on social media, but now her messages were unread and her FaceTime calls went unanswered. When a police officer arrived at the Keel family's home, Lynn was there. It was surprising that his wife's disappearance was reported to the police by her co-workers instead of by him. Lynn told the officer that he last saw Diana 2 days earlier, on March 8, when she left the house. Since her car was still parked outside, this raised more suspicion, prompting the police to bring Lynn in for questioning. When asked where his wife was, 57-year-old Keel said she had gone out to run errands and hadn't returned yet. He noted that she sometimes left for a few days. However, his explanation raised suspicions. The man was released without facing any charges. The police to start a search for Diana. Investigators learned she hadn't used her cell phone or bank cards for several days, raising concern for her safety. Her house is in a secluded area with no neighbors who could assist the police. However, detectives found out that on the morning of March 8, Diana and her partner had a heated argument on their front porch. A courier, who delivered a package to Diana that day, was the last person to see her, apart from Lynn Keel. After interviewing Diana's co-workers, the police learned that she was experiencing problems with her husband. They believed she would never abandon her son or run away. Her main concern about getting a divorce was the fear of losing custody of her 10-year-old son. Every person the detective spoke to pointed to one potential suspect in Diana's disappearance, her husband, Lynn Keel. Early in the investigation, a troubling detail came to light. 2 years before Diana vanished, Lynn had taken out a life insurance policy on her for over $1 million, naming himself as the sole beneficiary. Furthermore, in 2008, sheriff's deputies were called to their home due to a domestic disturbance, but no further action was taken at that time. Just 2 days after the investigation began, the police received a disturbing call. An employee from the North Carolina Department of Transportation reported finding something on Pokes Hole Road. Sadly, the man had discovered Diana's body, which seemed to have been there since the day she went missing. He found it while checking an illegal dumping site. Pokes Hole Road is a dead-end street that leads to farmland. While it was a relief that the body was found, the word relief feels inadequate given the tragic circumstances. It's unclear how long it might have taken for the police to locate Diana's body, which was 30 miles away from her home. Nash County Sheriff Keith Stone shared his sadness about the situation, stating, "Everyone who knew her spoke very well of her. This is a tragic event. What makes it even more heartbreaking is that we now have a 10-year-old child who has lost her mother." He added, "This situation is very difficult. Life is delicate, and seeing a child left without her mother is extremely hard. We have many questions that still need answers, which is why the Nash County Sheriff's Office is approaching this case with compassion, integrity, and commitment. The circumstances surrounding her death are still unclear, but it was evident that foul play was involved." The police identified one primary suspect, Lynn Keel. Upon learning that his wife had been found dead, he expressed surprise. He was taken to the police station for questioning, where he spoke to investigators. Lynn maintained that Diana frequently left for several days but always came back. However, this contradicted statements from Diana's colleagues, family, and friends, who revealed that Lynn tightly controlled her life and even prevented her from seeing her friends. After the interrogation, Lynn was released because the autopsy results were not yet available. Diana's cousin, who lives in Colombia, shared with reporters that Diana moved to North Carolina to pursue the American dream, but instead, it turned into a nightmare. After the medical examiner's report was released, disturbing details about Diana's death emerged. She suffered severe skull fractures and had multiple sharp injuries on the left side of her face and neck. Some of these injuries occurred after her death, suggesting that the attacker may have had a personal vendetta against her. When the police arrived to arrest Lynn and search his home, he had already fled. He was placed on a nationwide wanted list, with reports indicating he might be driving a gold pickup truck and could be dangerous. After being questioned at the police station, Lin drove his 10-year-old son to his parents' house, took his father's car, and escaped. During a search warrant executed at the home he shared with Diana, authorities confiscated various firearms, including rifles, pistols, and revolvers, as well as swords, a machete, and several knives. Authorities discovered 2 pages from the diary of Diana's 18-year-old daughter in a Dodge Ram owned by Lin. When the sheriff was asked about the contents of those pages, he said he was not comfortable sharing that information. The search for Lin was ongoing, and it was revealed that he had left the state, but his exact location was still unknown. Sheriff Stone mentioned that they had received tips regarding Lin's truck from people in Texas and Florida, but no new information about his capture was confirmed. He urged the public to check local motels and hotels for a pickup truck matching the license plate number provided in a public notice. On March 17, 2019, just 5 days after Diana's body was found, Arizona State Police arrested Lin, 34 miles from the U.S.-Mexico border. He had a large amount of cash and many canned goods, suggesting he intended to cross into Mexico. Following his arrest, he was airlifted to Nash County and faced charges related to his wife Diana's death. Forensic investigators discovered significant evidence that Diana's attack occurred in the bedroom. The prosecutor stated that after taking Diana to a secluded spot, Lin went to a nearby Walmart and purchased cleaning supplies in an attempt to erase any traces of the crime. In October 2021, Rexford Lin Keel, 59, pleaded no contest to charges against him in order to avoid a lengthy trial. A no contest plea is similar to a guilty plea, meaning that the defendant accepts responsibility for the charges. Lin admitted to second-degree murder and first-degree kidnapping. His defense attorneys requested the judge to consider his kidney failure as mitigating factors during sentencing. Diana's mother addressed the court, emphasizing the loss of her daughter and urging women in abusive relationships to seek safety. She appealed to the judge for a strict sentence. Diana's cousin issued a statement from the family expressing gratitude to law enforcement for capturing Lin, the suspect in Diana's murder. They conveyed their appreciation for the compassion shown by the Nash County Sheriff's Office and the support they had received. The cousin described Diana as an amazing mother, daughter, sister, and friend, noting that her love for her children was boundless and that she brought joy to everyone with her laughter and kindness. They asked everyone to remember Diana and her children with positive thoughts and thanked everyone for their support. Lin did not share his reasons for committing the crime. It's possible he discovered that Diana was meeting with a lawyer to start divorce proceedings. Additionally, there is the matter of the insurance policy worth over $1 million. Under a plea agreement, Lin was sentenced to 32 to 41 years in prison. Moreover, police are investigating the death of Lin's first wife, Elizabeth. There are lingering questions about whether her death was truly an accident. Her family has expressed ongoing concerns and sadness regarding her death. In their statement, they noted their sorrow that another life has been lost and that they have always questioned the circumstances surrounding Elizabeth's passing. Stone, a law enforcement official, stated, "We are going to pursue all leads concerning this matter, and we will review the initial incident reports." He added that discussions with the district attorney's office are necessary. Elizabeth is buried in a family plot in Spring Hope. Stone is collaborating with a pathologist and reviewing the evidence, indicating that exhuming Elizabeth's body is a strong possibility. Dr. John Butts, who served as North Carolina's chief medical examiner for 24 years, explained that exhuming a body is typically done when there are unresolved questions that could be clarified by re-examining the remains. He shared that there have been instances where deaths initially ruled as accidents turned out to be homicides. For example, someone who falls to their death may later be found to have been pushed. The examination results would remain the same, but the context surrounding the incident would shift significantly. Despite this, Dr. Butts noted that there has been no new information regarding Elizabeth's death in the past 2 years. This suggests that authorities may not have found grounds to reopen the investigation or exhume the body at this time, but there could be further developments in the case in the future. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Rachel Anderson. Rachel Anderson was born on January 28, 1994, in Warren, Ohio, to William Bill Anderson and Patricia Trish Anderson. She had a younger brother, John, who was a common family favorite. Rachel graduated from Warren Harding High School in 2012, where she was a member of the National Honor Society and excelled in soccer and volleyball. Unlike many of her peers, Rachel pursued an unconventional career. From a young age, she aspired to become a funeral director. To achieve her goal, she attended Youngstown State University, where she studied mortuary science. Her dedication earned her a spot on the list of top students, and she received a scholarship. Rachel later furthered her education at Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science, graduating in 2016 with a bachelor's degree in mortuary science. After becoming a member of the Ohio Funeral Directors Association, Rachel moved to Columbus to start her internship at Shaw Davis Funeral Home. She was deeply respectful of her work and felt a strong sense of duty to support grieving families. With her internship nearing its end, she hoped to secure a full-time position at the funeral home. However, her dreams and ambitions were tragically extinguished. Rachel's body was then sent to the morgue for a more thorough examination. The investigation began with interviews of key witnesses, and an autopsy was conducted to analyze the full extent of Rachel's severe injuries. The results showed that she had been strangled and stabbed. Specifically, she had a scalp laceration and skull fractures at the base of her head. The stab wound, located at the back of her neck, penetrated deep into her brain, damaging the left hemisphere. Rachel was killed with extreme force, as seen in the autopsy results where part of her skull was broken off. The autopsy also showed she was strangled using an electric blanket cord, which led to severe internal bleeding in her neck and chest area, as well as in her eyelids. Furthermore, the blood vessels in her eyes became filled with blood due to the strangulation. Additional forensic evidence indicated that Rachel was alive when the perpetrator restrained her, shown by bruises and red marks on her wrists and ankles. A DNA sample was discovered on the rope used to restrain Rachel and on her body. The coroner's autopsy results concluded that Rachel's death was ultimately caused by a stab wound to the head and neck, rather than strangulation as initially thought. The police interviewed several co-workers and Rachel's ex-boyfriend, who had an alibi for the time of the murder. Detectives returned to Rachel's apartment to conduct a search for evidence or clues that could lead them to the culprit. In the living room, the police discovered Rachel's purse, but it was missing her wallet. This led them to initially suspect a robbery. However, 2 weeks later, a crucial piece of evidence was found: a 9-inch steak knife used in the crime. It was discovered by Rachel's mother in a box in her apartment. However, the severity of the torture suggested that the perpetrator was not just a common thief, but rather someone who carefully planned their actions and took pleasure in having control over the victim. During the investigation, detectives explored various motives behind Rachel's death but struggled to identify suspects. The details of her death were kept under wraps to maintain the investigation's secrecy and prevent tipping off the perpetrator. The discovery of DNA evidence on Rachel's body and at the crime scene initially brought new hope to the investigation. However, it was ultimately unsuccessful since the DNA samples did not match any profiles in the existing database. A new clue emerged when investigators obtained video footage from street surveillance cameras. The footage showed 2 individuals using Rachel's car to drive around the city after her murder, and it was also discovered that cash had been withdrawn from her debit and credit cards. A further investigation using location services revealed a phone number that was in House Rachel's on January 28, 2018, between 7:59 p.m. and 9:25 p.m. By analyzing this evidence, authorities were able to track the location of the suspect. The investigation led to identifying the account holder linked to the phone number, ultimately revealing the suspect. The suspect was identified as 54 years old Anthony Pardon, an offender with a long history of serious crime, including multiple rapes, robbery, kidnapping, and attempted murder. Anthony had previously spent a total of 33 years in prison for these crimes. Anthony's early life was troubled. Initially, he living with grandparents, he moved to live with his mother. As a child, he received diagnoses of conduct disorder and antisocial personality disorder. In March 1979, at the age of 14, he was temporarily committed to the Ohio Youth Commission. Later that year, in July, he was placed in the custody of the court and temporarily transferred to Franklin County Children's Services. In December, Anthony was convicted of making threats and subsequently transferred to the Ohio Youth Commission, where he was placed in foster care. The following year, in 1980, Anthony, then 15 years old, was charged with abuse after assaulting the son of his foster parents. He confessed to the police that he committed the crime due to being emotionally distressed following a heated argument with his girlfriend. In another incident on November 13, 1981, 16 years old Anthony was convicted of several crimes. He had entered his girlfriend's 39 years old mother's home to use the phone, but he pulled out a butcher knife, sexually assaulted her, and stole $100 from her purse. He then gagged she, tied her hands and feet, and placed her in the trunk of his car. Anthony drove her to Valleydale, where he untied her feet and attempted to drown her in a river behind the Valleydale Ballroom. However, the woman managed to stay afloat. He then got into the water and held her head underwater, but a passerby intervened and scared him away. The woman survived the assault. Anthony escaped before the police arrived and used the stolen money to purchase tennis shoes and jogging uniforms. In May 1982, in Franklin, Anthony was convicted of various crimes at the age of 17. As a result, he received a prison sentence ranging from 5 to 25 years. During his time in prison, he committed several disciplinary offenses, including possession of a prohibited weapon, setting fire to a mattress, and engaging in physical altercations. He ultimately spent over 24 years behind bars, then being released in November 2006. After his release, Anthony moved to Georgia and applied for a job under a false name. However, his freedom was short-lived. In 2007, he was charged with forgery in Floyd County and received another conviction. This led to a 9-year prison sentence, followed by 20 years of probation and the requirement to wear a GPS ankle monitor. He was released from prison in 2017 and returned to Ohio in June of that year, through an interstate agreement. Upon his return to Ohio, Anthony was placed under the supervision of the Adult Parole Authority and was required to check in with the local sheriff's department every 90 days. Unfortunately, due to budget constraints and negligence on the part of state authorities, he was able to roam free once again without adequate oversight. On August 21, 2017, he was found with lock up a woman in his car. 6 days later, he was stopped for driving without a license and was discovered to be in possession of a kitchen knife and a shotgun. Despite these incidents, he was not taken into custody. The investigation into Rachel's case continued to unfold. Security footage revealed a man getting out of Rachel's car and entering a store, while the driver remained out of sight. Police interviewed store employees and eventually identified the man as Anthony Sleets, a local homeless man. Sleets was questioned by police a couple of days later. He claimed that an older man approached him and asked for his help in cashing in his ex-girlfriend's cards. Sleets agreed, becoming an accomplice in the case. During questioning, he confirmed that the older man was Anthony Pardon and provided details of their actions on the evening of January 28, 2018, when they attempted to use Rachel's stolen cards. The next step was to find and apprehend Anthony Pardon. After several days of surveillance on Anthony's sister's house, he was finally caught on February 9, 2018. Anthony, 54 years old, with a history of offenses, was charged with 9 counts, including burglary, aggravated robbery, kidnapping, rape, and murder. The trial of Rachel Anderson's case began on February 4, 2020. On the first day, 4 witnesses took the stand, including Jonathan Kennedy, who discovered Rachel's body, and the apartment complex manager. Officer Frank Ghani also testified, describing what he saw from his car outside the complex and the surveillance footage he witnessed. Jonathan found Rachel's body, and Officer Ghani was nearby. Over the next few days, additional witnesses testified, including Anderson's brother John, Special Agent Joshua Durst on February 5, and lead detective Art Hughes on February 6. The defendant, Anthony Pardon, expressed dissatisfaction with his lawyers on February 6 and requested new lawyers. However, this was likely a delaying tactic court session by he. On February 10, the prosecution presented expert witnesses, including a latent print expert. He explained the technology used to track Rachel's debit card usage and its connection to the crime scene. Anthony's sister later took the stand and revealed that her younger brother had given her a debit card, claiming it belonged to his girlfriend. After watching a TV news report, she realized the card actually belonged to the victim, Rachel Anderson. The final day of testimony, February 11, featured crucial evidence. The medical examiner testified that Anthony's DNA was found at the crime scene. A forensic pathologist and deputy coroner from Franklin County gave detailed accounts of Rachel's injuries. Through the various testimonies, the court was provided with a detailed account of Rachel's final days. On January 26, 2018, Rachel turned 24 years old. Her brother John traveled from Warren to Columbus to celebrate with her. The following day, Rachel and her brother visited their friend, John Kennedy, where a birthday party was held in her congratulations. After the party, she and her brother spent the night at Kennedy's house. The next day, January 28, Rachel went to work, leaving the key to her apartment with her brother. However, when John returned to his hometown, he unintentionally took the key with him. Later that afternoon, around 1 o'clock, Rachel sent a text to Kennedy, asking to pick up his spare key to her apartment. Rachel spoke with her mother around 6:30 in the evening and then retrieved her key from Kennedy. After stopping for dinner, Rachel returned to her apartment at approximately 7:30 p.m. As her apartment door could only be locked from the outside with a key, it was left unlocked. Anthony abducted Anderson inside the apartment building. He took her to the top floor, where he violently restrained her using the cord from a hair dryer to tie her feet and ankles, and a belt along with blind cords to bind her hands. Once Rachel was unable to move, Anthony used a curling iron cord to restrict her wrists and prevent her from screaming. He also gagged her to further silence her. Under duress, Rachel was forced to reveal her bank card PIN numbers to her attacker. He then subjected her to torture and took advantage of her. The attack resulted in Anderson's death when he used a cord from an electric blanket to strangle them. In addition, she suffered blunt force trauma and a stab wound to the head. After committing the crime, Anthony carefully concealed Rachel's body in a closet. He left her partially naked, with the electric blanket cord wrapped around her neck and tied to the door handle. Anthony then proceeded to steal Rachel's car and used her bank cards to make multiple purchases at various stores in Columbus. The defense presented no witnesses during the trial. The final hearing took place on February 12. Assistant Prosecutor Amy Van Killen presented the state's initial argument, outlining a chronological sequence of incident and asserting to the jury that Anthony intentionally murdered Rachel brutally. In his argument, Anthony's attorney, Larry Thomas, acknowledged that his client used Rachel's credit cards but disputed Anthony's involvement in the crime. Larry argued that the prosecution's case relied on speculation and the DNA and cell phone evidence failed to prove Anthony's guilt. After roughly 6 hours of deliberation, the jury, composed of 4 men and 8 women, finding Anthony guilty on all charges. The prosecution sought the death penalty, pointing to the serious nature of the burglary and the defendant's previous conviction for a similar crime that involved attempting to kill a woman. Due to Anthony's extensive history of criminal behavior, prosecutors requested the death penalty instead of leniency. According to Prosecutor O'Brien, certain individuals consistently disregard the law, and Anthony Pardon is a prime example. The sentencing phase commenced on February 18th. In an effort to reduce the severity of the sentence, the defense highlighted Anthony's troubled childhood as a mitigating factor. However, prosecutors countered that the aggravating circumstances outweighed any mitigating factors. During the trial, it was established that Anthony was fully aware of his actions when he attacked Rachel. Despite this, several people testified in his defense, including his mother, sister, a psychologist, and his former elementary school teacher. Anthony gave an impromptu 13-minute statement to the jury. During this time, he discussed the abuse he suffered in his childhood and the hardships he faced after being released from prison, expressing feelings of helplessness. Anthony claimed that the justice system had failed him and that he received no support, ultimately blaming the system for his current circumstances. However, Anthony did not directly address the crime he committed or offer an apology for his actions. After 3.5 hours of deliberation, the jury sentenced Anthony to life imprisonment without parole. The sentencing took place on March 16, 2020. Rachel's mother was visibly emotional in court as the verdict was announced. Rachel's father felt shocked that Anthony is blaming the system for his actions, rather than taking responsibility for what happened. He acknowledged that the system does have its flaws, but in this case, it was Rachel who was ultimately let down. Judge McIntosh delivered the verdict, sentencing Anthony Pardon to life sentences without parole for aggravated murder and violence. Additionally, Anthony received 63 years in prison for various other charges, including aggravated burglary, kidnapping, and aggravated robbery. Rachel's life was tragically cut short when she passed away on her 24th birthday. At the time of her death, she was nearing the end of her internship and was close to securing a promising job. Rachel was laid to rest at Pine View Memorial Park, leaving behind her family and friends were left to cope with the unexpected and devastating loss. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Heidi Firkus. Heidi Firkus was born on December 14, 1984, as the youngest child and only daughter among the 3 children of John and Elinda Erickson. She lived a fulfilling life, known for her cheerful personality and artistic talents. After graduating from high school in 2003, Heidi attended Northwestern University in Roseville. She was a regular at Calvary Chapel, where she had been involved since childhood. At church, Heidi met Nick Firkus. They both became youth group leaders, serving the community with dedication and passion. Nick was born on February 25, 1983, to Julie and Steve Firkus. He is an ambitious and dynamic young man, working as the CEO of a reputable carpet cleaning company. Nick is known for his well-rounded personality and good work ethic. He found his ideal partner in Heidi, whom he met at Calvary Chapel. In 2005, Nick and Heidi, then 22 and 20, were married at the church where their love began. The wedding took place surrounded by family and friends. To outsiders, their marriage seemed perfect. They both loved traveling and cycling, were active in church activities. Heidi began working at her father's financial services company in an administrative role. Their relationship seemed to grow stronger over time. However, their lives were not what they seemed. Little did Heidi know that her life was about to take a turn. On the morning of April 25, 2010, a tragic event occurred in St. Paul, Minnesota. Heidi called 911 to report an intruder in her home. Just 38 seconds into the call, while Heidi was giving her address, she suddenly yelled, "No," and a gunshot rang out. 65 seconds after the first shot, Heidi's husband, Nick, used her phone to contact 911 again. He said in desperation, "Please, someone just broke into my house and shot me and my wife." During the call, Nick sobbed and repeatedly screamed, "Oh Heidi, my wife is dead, please come here." He also screamed, "No," in pain. When police arrived at the scene, they found Heidi lying unconscious in the kitchen with a gunshot wound to her back. Nick was lying next to her on the floor, still talking to 911. He looked very distressed and had a wound to his left leg. Nick told police that one or two intruders had broken into their home. He grabbed a handgun and tried to flee with his wife through the back door, heading towards the garage. However, the intruder grabbed the gun from Nick and shot both of them. Meanwhile, Nick was taken to the emergency room for treatment. There, police questioned him about why he and Heidi left their bedroom, which was supposedly safer, to face potential danger. Nick explained that they were just trying to escape the house through the back door. After being treated for his injuries, Nick was released from the hospital after only 3 hours. Nick was called back to the police station for further questioning about the incident. He recounted in detail what happened. Nick said he remembered that he and Heidi watched a movie and drank alcohol together that night. They went to bed around midnight. Nick said he woke up the next morning, between 6:10 and 6:15, to the sound of the screen door opening and someone trying to unlock the front door. Investigators asked Nick about the door being locked. Nick admitted that he and Heidi usually locked it, but he thought he had forgotten to do so on the night of the incident. Upon hearing the strange noise, Nick said he retrieved the handgun from the upstairs closet. He explained that he had brought it up from the basement a month earlier because it had begun to rust. Initially, the gun was unloaded, but he loaded it when he heard the noise. He then woke Heidi and asked her to call 911. He instructed her to leave the house and go to the garage, where they had parked their car, as part of a safety plan they had agreed upon in case of danger. Although right-handed, Nick held the handgun in his left. He followed behind Heidi, protecting her as they moved towards the garage. Nick said that he and Heidi stopped at the front door to get her purse. Suddenly, the door opened and a man rushed in. The intruder was dark-skinned, about 6 feet 1 inch tall, weighing between 200 and 220 pounds, and wearing a dark-colored hooded sweatshirt with the hood pulled tightly around his face. Nick said the intruder grabbed his handgun. They struggled, and during the scuffle, the gun went off. Nick explained, "My finger accidentally touched the trigger. Heidi was running away, so I may have hit her in the back." Nick recounted the incident that the first shot hit Heidi, causing her to fall immediately. He and the intruder continued to wrestle for the gun. During the struggle, the gun went off again, hitting Nick in the upper thigh. He fell to the ground from his wound. At that point, the intruder escaped through the front door. Nick told investigators that Heidi became unconscious after being shot, and he later lost consciousness due to his wound. Nick told the police that their home was going to be foreclosed on the following day. They planned to inform family and friends of the situation that same day. Nick explained that, due to falling behind on their mortgage payments, their home had been repossessed and sold. Although they had to leave, they hadn't told anyone about it. Their plan was to pack up on Sunday and leave some items in the garage for pickup later on Monday morning. They planned to find temporary accommodation, but life took a different turn. Brendan O'Connor, a neighbor who was cat-sitting at a nearby home, reported to police that he heard an argument followed by gunshots. He also heard someone shouting for help. "You shot her. You shot me. Please, please don't." Although no one saw the intruder flee, Nick provided police with a sketch of the suspect a few weeks later, which was released to the public. Police described the suspect as an unidentified man, 6 feet 1 inch tall, weighing 200 to 220 pounds, and wearing a dark-colored hoodie. About 3 weeks after the murder, the police showed Nick an artist's sketch of the suspect based on his original description. In this updated report, Nick further described the suspect as African American, estimated to be between the ages of 40 and 60. Based on this information, the initial investigation focused on finding the unidentified African American intruder. Police searched the surrounding area extensively, hoping to find evidence or witnesses to corroborate Nick's account. However, the investigation into Heidi's death did not result in any arrests or charges. As a result, the case remained unsolved for many years. More than a decade later, Heidi's murder remains unsolved. Nick appears to have moved on with his life, marrying Rachel and starting a family. However, when financial troubles resurface, Rachel begins to suspect that her husband has hidden secrets. Nick's reluctance to discuss his finances makes Rachel even more curious. She begins to dig deeper and discovers irregularities in Nick's past. These discoveries make Rachel question everything she knows about her husband, including his possible involvement in Heidi's death. Rachel is unaware of the couple's financial troubles, similar to Heidi and Nick's situation years ago. Concerned, Rachel contacts the authorities, bringing attention to the case. Investigators then focus on Rachel Firkus, Nick's second wife since 2012. While speaking to the authorities, Rachel reveals that she divorced Nick in 2019 due to his worsening financial problems. She also recorded an argument with Nick about his affair before their divorce. "He definitely did the same thing he did with Heidi," Rachel told investigators. "I saw a letter warning us that we hadn't paid our property taxes and were at risk of being evicted in 2020 if we didn't pay." When Rachel reported her suspicions to the police, the Heidi murder case was reopened. Sergeant Nicole Sipes of the St. Paul Police Department was assigned to the case. She listened carefully to Rachel's concerns and began reviewing all the evidence. Determined to find the truth, Sergeant Nicole took a bold step. She asked the FBI to help analyze the 911 call recordings. She hoped this would lead to new clues that would shed light on what happened the night of Heidi's murder. After a thorough examination of the recordings, the FBI found no evidence of a third party being involved. This was surprising because it contradicted Heidi's husband's previous statement to the police. Sergeant Nicole and her team were puzzled by this new information. If Heidi and her husband were the only ones in the house, then what exactly happened between them that led to her death? The absence of a third person further raised suspicions about the husband's involvement in the murder. The investigation continued to intensify in order to find the truth. New discoveries by the FBI opened up new lines of inquiry. Sergeant Nicole was more determined than ever to bring justice to Heidi and provide answers to her grieving family. Investigators collected financial documents that contradicted Nick's previous statements, making him the prime suspect in Heidi's murder. Nick's account of the incident kept changing. Initially, he said that the intruder had taken his gun and shot both him and Heidi. He later testified that the intruder did not take the gun, but that he had accidentally pulled the trigger, hitting Heidi in the back. After a thorough investigation, investigators found no signs of a break-in, such as overturned furniture or marks on the walls. The forensic analysis of the scene did not match Nick's account of the incident, especially regarding the direction in which the bullet struck Heidi. Additionally, Heidi did not mention seeing the intruder in the 911 call. The lack of evidence of a break-in made investigators suspicious. They believed it was part of Nick's plan to cover up his role in Heidi's death. As a result, an arrest warrant was issued for Nick on May 19, 2021, more than 10 years after Heidi's death. SWAT arrested Nick at his home in Mounds View. The arrest was the result of Rachel's suspicions and the investigative efforts of Sergeant Nicole Sipes. Many were surprised because the case was thought to be dead. As the trial progresses, the details of the case will be revealed, and the truth about that fateful night will gradually come to light. The big question on everyone's mind is whether Nick was responsible for Heidi's death. After Nick was arrested, Heidi's family said, "We are incredibly grateful to everyone who has worked tirelessly to bring this case to this stage. We also thank everyone who has prayed for and supported us over the years. We hope that these charges will help to clarify the truth and bring justice to Heidi. While we cannot bring Heidi back, we believe she would have wanted us to find the truth. God is glorified by the truth. Heidi's life and memory are further honored by the truth being revealed." The family expressed relief, gratitude, and determination to find the truth. They thanked those who persisted and the community's support, hoping Nick's charges will bring justice. When the case went to trial, Nick maintained his innocence. His family, especially his father, also believed in Nick's innocence. They believed that Nick's deep love for Heidi could not have led him to commit murder. However, the jury had a different view. After 10 hours of deliberating the evidence, on February 10, 2023, they reached a surprising verdict. Nick was convicted of brutal murder. This decision left everyone who knew Heidi stunned and in disbelief, especially since Nick was the person Heidi trusted the most. During the trial, the prosecution detailed the defendant Nick's difficult financial situation. They argued that Nick had kept his financial problems from Heidi and, fearing embarrassment, decided to kill her. The prosecution also questioned Nick's story about the home invasion, arguing that it could have been a cover-up for the crime. Compelling evidence was presented that there were no signs of forced entry into the home, there were many inconsistencies in Nick's testimony, and no DNA or physical evidence of an intruder was found. These factors reinforced the prosecution's argument that Nick was the perpetrator, not an intruder as he claimed. The lack of evidence cast serious doubt on the veracity of Nick's story. At the trial, the prosecutor accused Nick of not wanting to face the truth about his deceitful behavior, leading him to take the extreme step of killing Heidi to protect his reputation. Defense attorney, in contrast, argued that the transition from financial hardship to murder was unreasonable. He also argued that the idea of killing his wife to save his reputation was absurd and had no psychological basis. After a thorough trial and careful consideration of the evidence, the jury unanimously found Nick Ferris guilty of first-degree murder. On April 13, 2023, the judge handed down the harshest sentence possible. Nick would serve life in prison without the possibility of parole. Despite his guilty verdict, Nick Ferris maintained that he had nothing to do with the death of his wife, Heidi. He maintained his innocence, even after his conviction. Currently, Nick is serving a life sentence at the Minnesota Correctional Facility in St. Cloud, Minnesota. However, the motive for the murder remains unclear, leaving us to wonder what drove Nick to commit this regrettable act. However, the investigation revealed that in June 2009, Nick received a foreclosure notice on his home. The house was then auctioned off at a sheriff's auction that same month. About 10 months before Heidi's murder, the eviction process began in February 2010, and a hearing was scheduled for March 8, 2010, which Nick attended alone. The original closing date was April 9, 2010. Nick contacted attorneys, claiming that his grandmother was in the hospital and dying, and asked for the closing date to be moved to April 26. When investigators looked into the matter, they found no evidence that Nick's grandmother was actually in the hospital or had died in 2010. When they asked if Heidi knew about all of this, Nick claimed that Heidi was fully aware of their financial difficulties. He added that they had planned together to leave the foreclosed house and start a new life elsewhere. But the truth is that Nick killed his wife to hide his financial troubles from her. He was too ashamed to admit that he owed $118,000 in credit card debt and was 22 months behind on his mortgage. Although justice has been served, the pain and loss of Heidi's loved ones will remain. No punishment can undo the harm done or bring back the beautiful life she lost so cruelly. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Maria Luisa Cedeno. On July 18, 2020, Maria Luisa Cedeno checked into the Lamb Mission Inn Hotel in Manuel Antonio, located in the Punta Arenas province of Costa Rica. She was accompanied by her pet dog, Mofelda, a small dog that she treated like her daughter. On her first day, everything seemed normal. Maria Luisa spent time at the beach, enjoyed lunch at a restaurant, and had some drinks. At 4:30 p.m., Maria Luisa requested a bottle of wine, a bottle of mineral water, and 2 glasses to be brought to her room. Throughout the afternoon and evening, there was no activity from her room. On July 20th, hotel staff attempted to contact Maria Luisa but received no response. A staff member had spoken to Maria Luisa, and Maria Luisa mentioned that she was living alone after ending her relationship with her boyfriend. She expressed that she was not feeling well and was traveling with only her small dog, Mofelda. She also shared that the ongoing pandemic, which had begun several months earlier, was taking a toll on her mental health. Given the difficulties she had faced in her life, she felt she needed a vacation. The hotel staff decided to conduct a routine room check. They found the front door locked from the inside, so they opted to check the patio door instead. This door was an emergency exit for guests with pets, allowing dogs to go outside. As they approached this exit, they found it was only partially open. When they entered, they smelled a terrible smell and saw blood stains scattered all over the room. In one corner, they found a dog alive but shaking with fear. On the bed, they discovered Maria Luisa's body wrapped in a sheet. Maria Luisa is a respected anesthesiologist. At the age of 43, she is the head of the Department of Anesthesiology and Rehabilitation at Cima Hospital in Escazú. Maria Luisa is highly respected by her colleagues, and she is always ready to assist whenever someone needs help. Maria Luisa's parents lived in the town of San Carlos. Friends described her as a strong, intelligent, and likable woman who loved to travel. Upon receiving the news of Maria Luisa's death, her family was deeply saddened. The mystery surrounding this case began the moment the staff discovered Maria Luisa's body. The crime scene was gruesome and brutal. After discovering the body, the hotel staff contacted the police. Upon arriving and examining the scene, the police quickly determined that Maria Luisa had been murdered. Maria Luisa's body was severely damaged and tortured. Forensic experts then arrived to collect evidence, determine the cause of death, and analyze every detail to identify the perpetrator. A subsequent autopsy discovered multiple bite marks on the body and 2 broken fingernails, indicating that Maria Luisa had fought back. The autopsy also revealed that the killer had washed the body, suggesting that he had taken Maria Luisa to the bathroom after the murder. Police determined that Maria Luisa had been murdered in the bedroom, as evidenced by the large amount of blood found there. The perpetrator then took the body into the bathroom, washed it, dried it, wrapped it in a sheet, and placed it on the bed. The killer had washed the body, possibly to eliminate evidence and hide signs of the crime. However, this effort was largely ineffective because blood was found everywhere, on the floor, walls, curtains, and bed. This brutality suggested that the attack was exceptionally violent. Experts took photographs and gathered as much physical evidence as they could. The body was sent for an autopsy, and the police started questioning hotel staff and guests who might have witnessed or heard anything. At the scene, it appeared that Maria Luisa was screaming loudly and her dog was barking. However, no one reported hearing any screams throughout the night, despite the hotel being mostly empty due to the pandemic. Only a few staff were present, and the hotel owner, Harry Bowden, lived there with his husband. Harry Bowden also let some friends live in the hotel because they were having financial problems, as the hotel was never fully booked during the pandemic. In Maria Luisa's room, a bottle of wine and 2 glasses ordered through room service were discovered. An inspection of her cell phone later revealed that she had sent a picture of the 2 glasses to a friend, but she did not mention being with anyone or waiting for someone in her room. When police interviewed Maria Luisa's friends and family to check for any enemies, they discovered that Maria Luisa always ordered 2 glasses, even when she was alone. She would pour alcohol into one glass and water into the other, indicating that she was by herself and not waiting for anyone. Police believe the attacker may have been someone who saw Maria Luisa at the hotel, noticed the back door open and took the opportunity to attack. However, the brutality of the case suggests that the killer must have had a deep hatred for Maria Luisa to have attacked her like that. This has left the police baffled. In this case, it appears that this was a murder committed by someone who knew Maria Luisa and intended to kill her. However, there is no evidence that Maria Luisa was with anyone or that she was seeing anyone. The autopsy results further revealed that Maria Luisa had been abused. She had signs of strangulation and marks on her cheeks, lips, arms, and chest. Since Maria Luisa did not scream, the police suspect that there were several people attacking her, rather than one person. Police believe that 2 people held Maria Luisa down while a 3rd person raped her. An analysis of Maria Luisa's body found no evidence of rope or restraints. Police also speculated that the attackers may have gagged Maria Luisa by stuffing something into her mouth, allowing them to carry out the attack undetected. It didn't take long for police to find their first suspect, a man who was staying at the hotel with several fresh injuries that looked like scrapes and bruises. The man was Herrera, who worked at a nightclub in the city and was staying at the hotel at the time of the murder. Herrera was arrested. His footprints were compared to those found at the murder scene, and 2 of them matched Herrera's footprints, which were found on the porcelain floor in front of the bed in the bedroom. A second suspect, Luis Carlos Miranda, was arrested after a hotel security guard reported seeing him walking the hallways at night with suspect Herrera. After Herrera was taken into custody, Luis Carlos Miranda was questioned to determine if he was connected to the case. Dental tests were conducted, which revealed his dental records matched the bite marks found on Maria Luisa's body. Hotel staff reported that they saw Maria Luisa meet with Luis Carlos Miranda and Herrera on a few occasions, but these encounters were casual, with no indication that they knew each other well. They simply greeted each other and exchanged pleasantries. This casual interaction may have been due to the small number of guests in the hotel at the time. 2 friends, Luis Carlos Miranda and Herrera, were staying at the hotel due to financial difficulties during the pandemic. The hotel owner, Harry Bowden, had allowed them to live on his property. When the police discovered matching footprints and bite marks that implicated Luis Carlos Miranda and Herrera, they brought Harry Bowden in for questioning. During questioning, Harry Bowden shared that he and his husband had dinner with Luis Carlos Miranda and Herrera on the night of July 19, 2020. After dinner, the 4 men went to a private pool area. Harry Bowden explained that in exchange for their stay at the hotel, Luis Carlos Miranda worked on the hotel's marketing website, while Herrera worked as a chef and bartender. Harry Bowden and the suspects Herrera and Miranda were acquaintances and became friends over time. About a year before the murder, they began living in the hotel and began spending more time together, eating out and socializing. Meeting up led to a friendship between the 4 men. However, During the investigation, in August 2020, Harry Bowden cooperated with the police and gave an interview, but he was later arrested. Because his dental records matched 2 bite marks on Maria Luisa's body. Police continued to seize the phones of all the arrested suspects and found compromising text messages between Luis Carlos Miranda and Harry Bowden. These messages, sent a few days before the incident, had Miranda inviting hotel owner Harry Bowden to have an intimate relationship with a woman while Miranda was watching the woman. Textual evidence combined with physical evidence led police to arrest 3 suspects to build a case. Harry Bowden's husband was the only suspect not arrested due to lack of evidence, including no matching fingerprints, text messages, or bite marks on Maria Luisa's body. The prosecution charged Harry Bowden, Teodoro Herrera, and Luis Carlos Miranda with the murder of Maria Luisa Cedeno. The defense team for the suspects argued that the bite mark evidence was inconclusive, suggesting none of them were involved. Before the trial, Harry Bowden's lawyer asked for house arrest, citing 2 reasons. First, the country's pandemic posed a danger to Harry Bowden, who is 69 years old. Second, he had just undergone knee surgery and had difficulty walking, often relying on a cane. As a result, the court approved the house arrest order, allowing Harry Bowden to return to the hotel. Although confined to the hotel grounds, he still enjoyed a lavish lifestyle, complete with servants, restaurants, and swimming pools. On September 13, 2022, the public trial of Harry Bowden, Teodoro Herrera, and Luis Carlos Miranda began, where text message evidence and dental records were presented. At that time, the prosecution had difficulty proving the involvement of Harry Bowden and Luis Carlos Miranda. Although text messages were found and bite marks were allegedly found on Maria Luisa's body, the bite marks could not prove who committed the murder. On the contrary, there was a large amount of evidence against Teodoro Herrera. A bloodstain was found, and he had superficial injuries. Furthermore, his blood was found under Maria Luisa's fingernails and on several personal items, such as a watch and a cell phone, which were in Teodoro Herrera's room at the time of the search. As a result of the trial, Teodoro Herrera was sentenced to 50 years in prison for murder and rape. In contrast, Harry Bowden and Luis Carlos Miranda were declared innocent due to insufficient physical evidence linking them to the crimes. Although the case was resolved, Maria Luisa Cedeno's family, satisfied with Teodoro Herrera's verdict, was not satisfied with the acquittal of Harry Bowden and Luis Carlos Miranda. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Carrie Leah Farver. Carrie Leah Farver was born on November 30, 1974 in Macedonia, Nebraska, USA. After going through many relationships, she raised her son Maxwell alone. Carrie Leah loved her son very much. Carrie Leah spent a month in bed due to severe depression. Her mother, Nancy Rainey, helped take care of her son Maxwell. The complicated relationship with Maxwell's father along with the difficult living conditions caused Carrie Leah, a young woman of 20 years old, to fall into an unstable psychological state. Doctors diagnosed Carrie Leah with bipolar disorder. People with bipolar disorder often have 2 opposite psychological states. One moment they can feel overly excited, energetic and friendly, but then they can fall into a state of depression, frustration and helplessness. This disease causes them a lot of difficulties in daily life. However, in the early 2000s, Carrie Leah's doctor found an effective treatment that allowed Carrie Leah to live a normal life. In the fall of 2012, Carrie Leah received a lucrative job offer in nearby Omaha, an opportunity she couldn't refuse. Carrie Leah accepted the offer. However, her son, Maxwell, was in middle school and didn't want to change his familiar surroundings, so Maxwell decided to stay with his grandmother in Macedonia. One day in November 2012, Carrie Leah met Dave Kropa at the auto repair shop where he worked. When Dave looked at Carrie Leah's Ford Explorer, he realized that he really liked this woman. Carrie Leah was showing Dave something inside the car, and they stood close to each other, and there was a little tension. Not long after, Dave and Carrie Leah went on a date. Carrie Leah went to Dave's house. A while later, a woman named Liz called Dave a lot and texted him. Then Liz went to Dave's house to pick up something he had left for her. Dave explained to Carrie Leah that Liz Gollier was the first person Dave met online in 2012. Liz, born in 1975 in Michigan, initially told Dave that she was not looking for a serious relationship because she was a mother and needed to spend most of her time with her children. In Dave and Liz's relationship, they had few topics to talk about, and their relationship was mainly physical. After a while, Liz began to worry about what Dave was doing when she was not around, as well as who he was seeing. Dave often reminded her that they were in an open relationship and that she should not worry. He also insisted that Liz was free to date other men. However, Liz was not happy with this and began to bother Dave more and more. Liz also felt jealous of Dave's children and their mother, Amy, because she could not understand the close relationship they had after the breakup. Eventually, Liz's actions upset Dave, and he decided to break up with her. Carrie Leah sympathized with Dave, as everyone had relationships in the past, and Carrie Leah did not let that affect their relationship, but Liz was clearly upset to see a strange woman in Dave's house. Liz, feeling that Dave was increasingly distancing himself from her, wrote text messages, emails, and called Dave. However, Dave would not stop seeing Carrie Leah or anyone else because of Liz. 2 weeks after moving to her new job, Carrie Leah began dating Dave. Carrie Leah and Dave began spending more time together. Dave felt comfortable with Carrie Leah around. Carrie Leah said that she was not looking for a serious relationship, but just wanted to enjoy the good times together. In December 2015, Liz was shot. Liz probably guessed who it was. Luckily, the wound was not fatal. Liz thought, "This can't go on any longer, I have to do something." At 9:45 a.m. at work, Dave suddenly received a text message from Carrie Leah. In the message, Carrie Leah expressed her desire to live with Dave forever. The content of the message made Dave feel confused and surprised, because he did not understand the reason for Carrie Leah's sudden change. Because before, they had discussed and agreed that both of them would not rush into a binding relationship. Dave gently replied to Carrie Leah that he was not ready for this big change. Carrie Leah's response was very unpleasant. When Dave returned to the apartment, he found that all of Carrie Leah's belongings that she had brought were gone. This made him think that Carrie Leah had left him. On the same day, Carrie Leah deleted him from her Facebook friend list. Although it seemed like everything was over, it was not. Dave began receiving a series of text messages and emails from Carrie Leah, which were full of curses and threats to ruin Dave's life. The messages were numerous and all of them were rude. In addition, Carrie Leah did not show up for work. The strange messages from Carrie Leah were not only sent to Dave, but also to her mother and 15-year-old son. In May 2013, Carrie Leah posted a lengthy post on her personal Facebook page, in which she wrote, she had answered enough questions to prove to everyone that she had had enough. You can either believe that she was a girl, or leave her alone. She quit her volunteer job and she was fed up with people giving her a hard time. She just didn't want to go home right now. She was a grown woman, and if she wanted to leave home, she had every right to do so. Sorry for hurting everyone. Carrie Leah then remained absent for a while. Her mother realized something was wrong when Carrie Leah missed her own birthday, Max's birthday, and other family celebrations. Finally, when her father passed away. After a while, Liz Gollier began receiving messages from Carrie Leah. In those messages, Carrie Leah criticized and insulted Liz, even threatened Liz to stay away from Dave. To understand Carrie Leah's strange behavior, Liz contacted Dave. He said he was also in a similar situation. Carrie Leah sent him many messages and emails, in which Carrie Leah accused Dave of all kinds of wrongdoing, called him a liar, and promised to avenge the pain he had caused Carrie Leah. Gradually, the messages from Carrie Leah became more threatening, with confusing content and grammatical errors. Carrie Lee's mother insists that her daughter is not a hot-tempered person and has always been very careful in writing letters and documents. Carrie Leah pays attention to spelling and presentation. Is her bipolar disorder relapsing and developing into something more serious? After Carrie Lee's confusing actions, all the evidence points to Carrie Leah having psychological difficulties. Liz and Dave often receive hundreds of text messages and emails, even when they are together. Their phones constantly buzz with messages, which makes them both uncomfortable. Although they continue to date, Dave feels uncomfortable around Liz. She becomes more and more demanding, despite always insisting that Liz is fine with their no-strings-attached relationship. In January 2013, Dave found Carrie Lee's car in his front yard. Dave called the police and reported the incident. The police came to check the car and found no suspicious signs. The police then turned the car over to Carrie Lee's parents. Carrie Leah continued to text Dave and Liz. Carrie Leah even started sending pictures of Dave's children and threatening to harm them. As time went on, Carrie Leah continued to stalk them. Liz became increasingly jealous, made Dave angry and tired of the situation, and finally decided to end the relationship with Liz. In August 2013, Liz reported a fire at her house, which killed all of her pets, including a snake, a cat, and 2 dogs. Liz told the police that Carrie Leah had repeatedly threatened her through text messages and emails. So she suspected Carrie Leah of starting the fire. The police seized Dave and Liz's cell phones. Someone damaged Dave's auto repair shop and threw a brick through the window. Dave felt threatened, so he bought a gun to protect himself. After a while, Amy Flora, Dave's ex-wife, also began receiving threatening messages from Carrie Leah, because Dave often spent time with the children and met Amy. The police became suspicious for reasons that were hard to understand. Dave had only dated Carrie Leah for less than 2 weeks, but had been following him and his ex-girlfriends for 3 years. Meanwhile, Carrie Lee's family had not seen her for 3 years, and were trying to find her, using every method possible. In 2015, these efforts paid off. Police officers Ryan Avis and Jim Doty volunteered to investigate Carrie Leah Farver's disappearance. However, they found no evidence that Carrie Leah was alive. It was unusual for an adult to pack up and leave without spending any money. No one had seen her, and no one had heard her voice. This was very strange. With the assistance of Anthony Kawa, digital forensics administrator at the Pottawatomie County Sheriff's Office, police analyzed the contents of Dave and Liz's phones. In 2013, Anthony reported that Carrie Leah Farver had sent more than 50,000 text messages and 15,000 emails to Dave over the course of 3 years. Anthony also said that those impersonating Carrie Leah were becoming more sophisticated in their operations, trying to hide their IP addresses and real identities. It seems that someone knew what they were doing and had access to various computer programs. In December 2015, Liz Gollier contacted the police to report that she had been shot in the leg outside her home. She determined that the attacker was not Carrie Leah but Dave's ex-wife Amy Flora. Furthermore, Dave had a missing gun that Amy may have taken. It is possible that Amy was behind Carrie Lee's disappearance. A clue in the investigation indicates that people associated with Dave were being harassed. It is possible that Amy, having had a difficult life after breaking up with Dave, the father of her children, decided to take revenge and eliminate all rivals, and the relationship between Dave and Amy was still quite good. The children together brought them closer, and Carrie Leah clearly hindered their reunion. The police quickly questioned Amy, but surprisingly, Amy had an alibi. She was not at Liz's house when the shooting occurred, and this was confirmed by several people. Because there was no hard evidence, Amy was not arrested. Experts processed the data from Liz's cell phone and discovered important information. Anthony discovered fake email addresses with different variations of the name Carrie Leah. In addition, Anthony found an application that Carrie Leah used to schedule messages to be sent at certain times. This could explain why Liz and Dave received messages from Carrie Leah at the same time. Anthony began to suspect Liz Gollier. The answer became clear when Liz's fingerprints were compared to those found on the steering wheel of Carrie Lee's car, and they matched perfectly. The culprit was revealed. The killer has been here for years without anyone knowing. The case needs to be solved as soon as possible. The police want to catch Liz red-handed, so they plan to frame Liz. The police decide to make up a story about believing Liz, with Amy still being the main suspect. Liz takes the bait. Liz is extremely happy because she can finally get rid of another rival who is hindering Liz's happiness with Dave. Soon after, Liz gives the police an email that she says is from Amy. In the email, Amy admits to kidnapping Carrie Leah and includes many details about the incident. The confession in the email states that Carrie Leah was stabbed in the stomach or chest before being dumped. In addition, the email contains information about Carrie Lee's car and home address that no one else knows. The police say that Liz has provided information that only the real culprit would know. The email messages clearly indicated that the crime had taken place in a car, so the police decided to re-examine Carrie Lee's car. After the police removed the upholstery and fabric, they discovered blood stains belonging to Carrie Leah, who had gone missing. Liz had created fake messages on Carrie Lee's behalf without raising suspicion. According to the investigation, Liz Gollier dated both Dave and a man named Garrett. Garrett lived at the IP address identified as the source of the messages under Carrie Lee's name. When talking to Garrett, the police discovered that he had been in a long-term relationship with Shanana Gollier, known to many as Liz. Garrett had invited Liz to live with his children after a fire. However, their relationship became complicated and strained when they lived together, with Garrett having to care for Liz's children while she was away. Garrett was surprised to hear from police that Liz had spent 40 to 50 hours a week impersonating the missing woman Carrie Leah. Liz's room was a mess, but no significant evidence was found. However, police did find several cell phones and electronic devices in the last room she stayed in. In late December 2016, Shanana Gollier, known as Liz, was charged with first-degree murder. Liz's attorney, James Martin Davis, hopes the case will fail because Carrie Lee's body has not been found, the murder weapon has not been found, and Liz has not pleaded guilty. There is no evidence to prove that Carrie Leah is dead. The defense team decides to hold a new trial, with Liz's guilt decided by a judge. Electronic evidence was presented along with physical evidence. The prosecution asserted that the amount of blood found on the passenger seat of Carrie Lee's car was consistent with Liz's confession. Police analyzed the memory card that Liz had been using when Carrie Leah went missing. The memory card was on Dave's tablet. Police recovered deleted images, including a photo of a human foot with a Chinese symbol tattoo. The foot belonged to a man who had died many years earlier. There was also a tattoo that Carrie Lee's mother identified as Carrie Leah. The photo was used to confirm Liz's guilt. The judge found Shanana Gollier, also known as Liz, guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced her to life in prison without parole. Additionally, Liz was convicted of arson in August 2013, a fire that not only destroyed her home but also killed her pet. Liz was sentenced to an additional 20 years in prison. She is currently incarcerated at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women and maintains her innocence. Carrie Lee's son Maxwell has followed in his mother's footsteps by becoming a computer programmer. Maxwell graduated from the University of Iowa with a degree in software engineering and data science and is married. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of the Ewell family. Dale Ewell was born in Ohio during the Great Depression. This challenging time in him the value of hard work and the importance of money, as he learned to appreciate every dollar he made. His family struggled financially, which likely motivated him to become determined and ambitious. Dale married Glee Michelle, a multi-talented woman, who worked as an elementary school teacher, a translator for the CIA, and served on a commission at the State Bar of California. They had 2 children, Tiffany born in 1967 and Dana in 1971. Dale's success provided the Ewell family with a comfortable life, including a home in Sunnyside, a beachfront property in Peraro Dunes, luxury cars, and designer clothing. After serving in the Air Force, Dale became a successful businessman. He eventually became the president and owner of Western Piper Sales Incorporated, a company that sold small aircraft. The primary source of the Ewell income came from selling light aircraft and investing heavily in the stock market. After establishing a successful aviation business, Dale expanded into buying several farms, accumulating substantial wealth. Together, Dale and Glee were worth an estimated $8 million, embodying the American dream. Despite their wealth, they lived modestly. Their children chose different directions in life. Tiffany pursued a similar career to her parents, whereas Dana chose a distinctly different route. At university, Dana presented himself as a successful entrepreneur, falsely claiming to be the source of his family's wealth. This fabricated story gained attention from a local newspaper and was even included in his school yearbook. In 1990, while attending Santa Clara University, Dana was fixated on wealth and luxury. He owned a BMW and had access to funds, allowing him to indulge in expensive items like jewelry. From a young age, Dana had a habit of lying and making up stories. Despite being intelligent and well-educated, Dana's ambitions went beyond comfort, wealth, and a promising future. He had the same ambitions as his father, but he didn't have the drive to achieve them in a proper and lawful way. Dana began fabricating elaborate and false stories about his accomplishments and importance while he was a student at the University of Santa Clara. He lied to both faculty and peers, claiming he was the head of a multi-million-dollar company. His false narrative included starting as a stockbroker at 18, moving to aircraft sales, and eventually becoming president of his own aircraft manufacturing company. The tension between Dana and his father, Dale, was largely unknown to others. Dana's tall tales may have caused his father embarrassment and contributed to their conflicts. Despite Dale's humble beginnings and generous support for his children, Dana seemed to have an excessive sense of entitlement. Dana Ewell presented himself as excessively self-centered and arrogant, prioritizing his wealth and social standing above all else. On Easter Sunday, April 19, 1992, the weather in Sunnyside, California was mild with partial sunshine, resulting in a pleasant afternoon. Dale, 59, spent the Easter weekend at his beach house with his 57-year-old wife, Glee, and their 24-year-old daughter, Tiffany. Glee and Tiffany returned to their home in Sunnyside by car, while Dale flew his private plane to his hangar and then drove home. When they arrived, they were ambushed. Tiffany was shot in the head and killed, followed by Glee, who was shot multiple times. The killers stayed in the house, waiting for Dale to arrive. 30 minutes later, Dale arrived home and was also fatally shot as he entered the house from the garage. 2 days later, Dana, the youngest member of the family, tried to contact his parents but was unable to reach them. Dana had spent the Easter weekend in San Francisco with his girlfriend and her father, an FBI agent. On April 21, 1992, the family's housekeeper, Juanita, arrived at the house for work and found Tiffany's body lying in a pool of blood in the kitchen. Juanita was distraught and sought help from a neighbor, who called the police. Meanwhile, Dana was still in Monterey, California. At the time of the murders, Dana was contacted by the authorities. His girlfriend's father quickly arranged for him to fly to Fresno, and Dana was visibly upset during this time. The police then started a thorough investigation, spending many days collecting evidence and interviewing witnesses. The crime scene was made to look like a robbery. However, experienced detectives believed the scene was deliberately staged to make it appear as though the family had been attacked and then killed by an intruder. Upon further examination, detectives found several irregularities, including the lack of weapons, bloodstains, footprints, or DNA evidence. Instead, the detectives found that the attack was carefully planned and carried out. The attacker was a skilled shooter, missing only one shot, and had even picked up the spent bullet casings inside the house. Investigators found a box of 9mm ammunition that Dale had purchased. It was later discovered that it had been used in the murder. The home appeared to have been ransacked, but nothing valuable was missing. There was no evidence of forced entry, and the alarm, which was usually turned on, had been turned off. Investigators thoroughly examined the victims' backgrounds, searching for any clues that might be connected to their deaths. They looked into Dale's past dealings, which included selling airplanes to an individual later convicted of drug smuggling in the 1970s, and a questionable real estate transaction with Dale's brother that potentially put investors at risk of losing millions. The police thoroughly investigated and eliminated all other potential suspects with motives, ultimately they concentrating on Dana, as he was the one who would benefit the most from the tragic event. As the only surviving member of the Ewell family and the main beneficiary of the estate, Dana naturally became a person of interest. Even though he had a solid alibi, having been with his girlfriend and her FBI agent father at the time of the murders, the police couldn't shake their suspicions about him. Dana's actions did not ease the concerns of others, but rather intensified their suspicions about his involvement in the murder. Although he outwardly showed distress and even offered a $50,000 reward for the capture of the killer, his grief seemed insincere. His reaction to the horrific killing of family members seemed surprisingly subdued, as he displayed little of the shock and sorrow that people typically exhibit in response to such a traumatic event. Instead of focusing on mourning the loss of his loved ones, Dana seemed more concerned with his parents' wills and inheritance. He did something disturbing, inviting a friend to view the house while there was still obvious blood on it, demonstrating a disregard for the victims. Furthermore, he allegedly expressed contempt for the police investigation, calling the investigators dummies who would never solve the case. Dana eluded authorities for 3 years, during which time they thoroughly investigated every lead to help solve the case. The situation worsened after Dale's brothers reported Dana to the authorities, claiming he had done something wrong. According to them, Dana became furious when he heard the will being read, as he learned that he wouldn't have full access to the $8 million estate until he was in his 30s. Dana reportedly slammed his hands on the table and screamed, asking why his father could do this to him. The trust stipulated that his parents would cover his expenses until he was 25, then he would receive investment dividends until he was 30. At 30, he would have access to half of the estate, with the remaining half available at 35. Before the funeral, the Ewell brothers act to prevent Dana from reclaiming what he believes is his. However, Dana managed to obtain around $300,000 from an insurance policy. Dana's uncles actively prevented him from inheriting his father's assets, causing him significant frustration. Despite the growing scrutiny from investigators and accusations from his own family members that he was involved in the murder to gain control of the family estate, Dana showed no signs of worry. He continued to live a lavish lifestyle, showering his girlfriend Monica with expensive gifts and even helping with her education costs. However, it was unclear where his money was coming from. Investigators suspected that money was a key factor in the murders and dug deeper. They discovered that Dana had been stealing money from various sources, including his grandmother's trust account, which had held $400,000. By the time detectives stepped in, the grandmother was left with only $22,000 to cover her care at a nursing home. The discovery that Dana had been exploiting his grandmother for personal gain further strengthened the police's suspicions about his character. However, authorities still need concrete evidence to prove Dana's involvement in the murder. Joel, one of Dana's college acquaintances, was particularly drawn to Dana's stories of a wealthy, successful lifestyle. Joel found Dana's apparent ability to effortlessly attract beautiful women especially intriguing. People around were surprised by their friendship, as they seemed to have little in common. Dana was driven by a desire for higher social status, while Joel's interests lay in video games, firearms, and explosives. Despite their differences, Joel's friendship with Dana gave him the opportunity to attend fancy parties and meet attractive women. Shortly after the Ewell family murders, Joel dropped out of school and soon became Dana's roommate in the Ewell family's former home. This marked a significant development in the investigation. Both Dana and Joel started making unusual purchases, such as helicopter flying lessons, despite Joel having no apparent source of income. As a result, investigators began surveilling both, monitoring their communications through pagers and payphones. Authorities cloned Dana's pager and tapped his landline in May 1993. An officer overheard Joel discussing the investigation on a payphone, saying, "They don't have evidence. They'll try to catch you in a lie." Meanwhile, Dana continued spending lavishly, buying a new car for his girlfriend and paying her law school tuition. After using up the insurance payout, he took $400,000 from his grandmother's account, leaving her with only $22,000 for her nursing home expenses. In 1994, investigators shifted their focus to forensic analysis, which revealed that the murder weapon was a rare 9mm assault rifle made in Colorado. Records from the company showed that a rifle had been bought by innocent Jack Pond just before April 1992. Notably, Jack was a high school friend of Joel. When questioned, Jack first denied buying the rifle, then claimed he bought it as a birthday present for himself, and said the gun was later stolen. The evidence against Dana and Joel continued to mount. At one point, detectives visited Dana at his university dorm and told him they believed Joel was responsible for killing his family. Dana stayed silent, visibly pale. After the detectives departed, Dana and his girlfriend, Monica, promptly contacted Joel's brother, Radovic, but they did not realize that they were being followed by the police. On March 2, 1995, police arrested Dana, Joel, and Peter, Joel's brother, and Jack Pond. Peter had made a deal with the authorities, agreeing to testify against his younger brother and Dana in exchange for immunity. Peter confessed to the police that he had made a homemade silencer and attached it to the murder weapon. He also admitted to getting rid of the gun barrel, Joel's tennis shoes, and some gun magazines. Peter said he did these things with the help of Jack Pond. When Jack was arrested, he gave a different account of the gun. He said he bought the gun for Joel but didn't know it was going to be used for the murders. Jack also confirmed that he and Peter had disposed of evidence together. Jack received immunity in exchange for his testimony, just like Peter. As a result of statements made by Peter and Jack, the barrel of the murder weapon was found buried in a field in Rica. Unlike Peter and Jack, Dana and Joel were not offered plea deals. They were charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances, which made them eligible for the death penalty. The trial began in late 1997. Dana and Joel, who had previously been close friends and had even lived together in the house where the murders occurred, now had separate lawyers and took different stances during the trial. Prosecutors argued that Dana's motive for the murders was greed, claiming he had promised Joel a share of the inheritance. Dana's lawyer argued that he was innocent, suggesting that Joel and Jack had planned and carried out the murders. Joel's lawyer acknowledged the strong evidence against his client and focused on trying to save him from the death penalty. During the trial, Jack Pond testified that he had bought the murder weapon for Joel and helped dispose of it. He also said Joel had given him details of the incidents on the day of the murder, in April 1992. According to Jack, Dana had asked Joel for a favor that he found hard to refuse. Having taken steps to avoid leaving DNA evidence behind, Joel carried out Dana's plan by entering the Ewell residence. He shaved off all body hair and then waited 12 hours on a plastic sheet to minimize the risk of leaving any traces, including an eyelash. He was also instructed to retrieve all bullet casings. Tiffany was shot in the back of the head and died instantly, without seeing her killer. Glee, however, saw Joel and tried to escape to the office, but was shot and severely injured. Joel pursued her and eventually killed her. During the trial, it was revealed that Joel had shot Glee multiple times at close range, and that she had recognized him as a friend of Dana's who had visited the family a month earlier. After killing Glee, Joel reloaded his gun and put on new gloves, then waited for Dale to arrive, whom he also murdered. On May 27, 1998, after an 8-month trial, the jury delivered a finding Dana Ewell and Joel guilty on all charges. However, they could not agree on the sentencing. 2 votes saved Joel from the death penalty, while Dana escaped the death penalty by just 1 vote. In the end, both received 3 consecutive life sentences without parole. Dana was imprisoned at Corcoran State Prison, 50 miles south of Fresno. He was among inmates like Charles Manson. His grandmother, whom he stole from, died in 1999. Dana claims to have undergone a spiritual transformation and become a Christian while in prison. Joel was imprisoned at Mule Creek State Prison in Ione, California. Meanwhile, Jack Pond pursued a career in law, becoming an attorney. Monica Zent broke up with Dana, finished law school, and established a successful law practice. Although Monica was thoroughly investigated, no evidence connected her to the crime. The only suspicious aspects were her initial unwillingness to cooperate and that some of the funds were used to help pay for her law school expenses. Dana Ewell's actions can be summed up by 3 words: greed, entitlement, and heartlessness. His extreme desire for wealth led him to manipulate and betray those closest to him, ultimately leading to the tragic deaths of his family members. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case, the case of Savannah Gray Wind. Savannah Gray Wind was born on August 9, 1995, in Burke County, North Dakota, to a family with a mix of cultural backgrounds. Her father is of European American descent, while her mother is a member of the Spirit Lake Sioux Indian tribe. Savannah had 2 brothers, Joy and Casey, and a younger sister, Kayla. Her parents, Norberta and Joe, were proud of their children. The family lived in Fargo, North Dakota, until Savannah was 9 years old. Then in 2005 they moved to Spirit Lake Reservation. Savannah loves nature and animals, especially horses. It was on the reservation that she met her partner, Ashton Matheny, when she was 15 years old. They remained together as they grew older. When it was time for college, the family moved back to Fargo. Savannah found work caring for the elderly at a nursing home. She studied to become a nurse and is preparing to take her exams in September. She was expecting her first child and was excited to start her life with Ashton. They had found an apartment and planned to move in together in early September. However, at the time of her pregnancy, Savannah was staying with her parents on the bottom floor of a 7-unit, 3-story apartment building. The building was also home to Brooke Cruz, a 38-year-old woman, and her partner, William Hone, who rented an apartment on the 3rd floor. Brooke's life was deeply affected by a past marked by hardship and complexity. The experiences turned her into a dark and emotionally disturbed person. Brooke had trouble managing her emotions and behaviors, often feeling anxious and angry. Brooke's fascination with mysticism and true crime stories began at a young age. As an adult, she studied the psychology of serial killers and attempted to understand their thought processes. Her writing reflected an obsession with human nature's darker side. Brooke saw two conflicting forces within people, good and bad, but her own life was a testament to the destructive power of unchecked darkness. By the time Brooke was 38, struggling with depression, physical illness, and exhaustion from toxic relationships that included regular physical abuse. Her fear of losing William was exacerbated by her inability to get pregnant. This desperate situation drove Brooke to think about committing a shocking crime, taking the life of a pregnant woman to take the baby for herself. After Brooke's arrest, investigators found a disturbing collection of books and notes in her apartment. The books covered topics such as forensic psychology, obstetrics, and law. Her notes listed items for a birthing kit, including scissors, blades, clamps, gloves, and an infant CPR bag. Brooke also had a stash of oxytocin, a hormone used to induce labor. Brooke grew up in a large family in Bradenton, Florida. Her parents divorced when she was young, leaving her mother to care for 7 children, including Brooke. While her family appeared to be well off, Brooke's diary revealed a difficult childhood that she tried to forget. As she entered her teenage years, Brooke became increasingly troubled and was the only one of her siblings to move in with her father, a man her mother described as a professional criminal. After a difficult period living with her father, Brooke was passed around through various foster families, causing her to lose contact with her siblings. Years later, they would only find out that Brooke had become the mother of 7 children. In 1995, when she was 15 years old, she met Aaron Edwards. 2 years later, she gave birth to her first child in Florida but chose to leave the baby with the father and relocate. Despite a court order to pay child support, Brooke failed to meet her obligations. She would eventually reconnect with her daughter briefly on Facebook when the child turned 14. Brooke worked multiple jobs, including as a waitress at the Chinese Dragon restaurant, a sales representative, and an animal specialist at Petland in Florida. However, her life was further marked by brushes with the law. In 2002, the 23-year-old was jailed in Missouri for document falsification but was paroled on August 31, 2022. Unfortunately, her freedom was short-lived, as she was rearrested and jailed in Texas for violating her parole. By the time Brooke was 27, she married Carl Cruz, a carpenter from Minnesota, in 2006. She gave birth to 2 children and worked as an administrative assistant at her husband's carpentry shop. However, Brooke had an affair, which ultimately led to their divorce in June 2009. Carl Cruz gained custody of their children, and Brooke moved to California without explanation. The only thing she did carefully and diligently throughout her life was to keep diaries, meticulously recording events as they unfolded. After a terrible crime has occurred, the diary was published in the press. The diary told of a string of lovers, home births, and abortions. At first, many of these relationships seem healthy and loving. However, over time, the men in her life begin to control her by making her feel inferior. Brooke felt that Carl Cruz bullied and humiliated her, making her feel like a bad and promiscuous mother. Despite these negative feelings, after moving to California and filing for divorce, Brooke surprisingly returned to Carl Cruz's house. She then registered on a dating website and started taking psychology classes seriously. Brooke met Andrew Murray, a chef from Katoomba, New South Wales, Australia, on the dating site Tagged. Brooke decided to move to Australia to be with Andrew. However, before leaving, she was involved in a dispute with Carl Cruz over child custody in January 2012. During the argument, she grabbed a knife and attacked Carl Cruz. The police arrested her and charged her. Although she denied the allegations, she chose not to wait for her court hearing and instead fled to Australia using false immigration documents. Once there, she married Andrew. Andrew's marriage to Brooke lasted only 6 months. During that time, he discovered her past, including a previous husband and children in the US, as well as fake immigration papers. According to Andrew, Brooke threatened him for helping her, prompting him to report everything to the police as a precautionary measure. Andrew remembers their marriage as a time when Brooke became intensely interested in crime and the behaviors of serial killers. Brooke's interest in crime began as early as 2012, when she was studying psychology in nursing. Her thesis focused on serial killers, and she spent a lot of time reading about them. In total, Brooke spent 6 months and 10 days in Australia before returning to the US in October 2012. However, after returning to the US, she became embroiled in a lengthy custody battle for her 2 children. Reconciling with Andrew might have given her a chance to start over, but instead, she met William Hone, a 28-year-old man with a history of child abuse, in late 2012. Brooke fell in love with William, a man who had been divorced twice. Despite his troubled past, Brooke was optimistic about her new life. She took a job and began to rediscover herself. In 2013, Brooke decided to pursue a degree at Minnesota State University, enrolling in courses such as social behavior, psychology of deviant behavior, and research methods. She was particularly drawn to the psychology of serial killers, and her paper on the subject earned her top marks. Brooke's relationship with William was loving and kind at first, creating a peaceful home for their children. However, over time, the relationship became codependent, marked by joint substance abuse, and the problem is getting more and more tense. As Brooke's relationship deteriorated, her well-being suffered. She began to withdraw from her children, struggled in her job, and became increasingly fixated on her research into the darker aspects of human psychology. In 2014, Brooke's life and spirit changed dramatically after a series of terrible things happened to her. The specifics of these things are not disclosed, but they appear to have had a profound and lasting impact on her mental health. Brooke suffered a panic attack and was rushed to the hospital, where she was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. In the following year, Brooke's relationship with William began to deteriorate. She expressed her feelings of emptiness in her diary. She felt neglected, which led to her starting to isolate herself from others. Brooke's physical and mental health continued to decline, and she was eventually diagnosed with a gallbladder disease. This led to a significant decline in her overall well-being, causing her to become reclusive and rarely leave her house. The situation took a turn for the worse when Brooke's partner, William, became violent. In May 2016, the police responded to a call and found that William had brutally beaten Brooke in the bathroom. He pleaded guilty to assault and was banned from approaching her. However, he failed to comply with the restraining order and was found in Brooke's apartment 6 months later. The relationship between Brooke and William continued, but it was no longer healthy. However, one issue remained: William wanted a child, while Brooke was unable to have one due to a 2011 abortion. In 2017, after a fight, Brooke fabricated a pregnancy to prevent William from leaving her. To convince him, she sent him fake proof, including a false ultrasound picture and a photo of a positive pregnancy test. Brooke found an online recording of a random baby's heartbeat and presented it to William, claiming it was the heartbeat of the child she carrying. In reality, there was no pregnancy. William had already shared with friends and family that Brooke was pregnant, and in an attempt to save face, he pressured her to actually have the baby. Brooke understood William's statement as a final decision and thought he was insisting that they adopt a child from someone else, specifically their pregnant neighbor Savannah, who lived 3 floors below them. Brooke, who had medical knowledge, began making a list of what she needed to induce labor. One Saturday afternoon in August, Brooke deceived Savannah by offering her $20 to model a dress, claiming it was one she was currently sewing. Savannah agrees and goes to Brooke's apartment, unaware of Brooke's true intentions. Meanwhile, Savannah had ordered a pizza, expecting to eat it when she returned home. Savannah did not return home at the expected time. The brother went upstairs to the apartment Brooke's around 2:30 p.m. and heard the sound of a sewing machine, but no one answered the door. A short while later, Savannah's father, Joe, also went upstairs and knocked on the door. Brooke, who was with Savannah, yelled out that they were still working on a dress and that Savannah was trying it on, which is why they couldn't open the door. When Norberta returned home, she found that the pizza was untouched. She texted her daughter several times but received no response. She then went upstairs to the apartment, where a neighbor informed her that Savannah had left a while ago after finishing her dress fitting. Norberta became anxious and searched her apartment. Finding that Savannah's shoes, purse, car keys, and other belongings were still there. Savannah had been experiencing heat and swelling that made it painful and difficult for her to walk, so it was unlikely that she had gone for a walk. Norberta called Ashton Matheny, hoping that he might have picked up Savannah, but he replied that he hadn't heard from her either. Growing increasingly worried, Norberta called the police and began driving around the neighborhood, searching for her pregnant daughter. Norberta was driving and thought that if Savannah had gone out, Norberta would have found her nearby. Later that day, the police searched Brooke and William's apartment because it was the last place Savannah was seen. They allowed the police to enter and didn't interfere, but since the police didn't have a warrant, they didn't check inside closets or behind closed doors. The police informed Savannah's family that since she was considered an adult, she had the right to make her own choices. They also stated that without evidence of a crime, there was no requirement for them to keep the family updated on her situation. The investigators concluded that Savannah had left voluntarily. However, Savannah's family was upset by the police department's apparent indifference to her disappearance. The police searched the apartment 2 more times but found nothing. Later, William would admit that he hid Savannah infant in a suitcase and Savannah's body in a dresser with the shells removed. 2 days after Savannah's murder, William and Brooke drove to a bridge over the Red River, carrying the dresser with Savannah's body, and dumped it into the water. On August 23, 2017, William's co-workers reported to police that he had mentioned having a baby at home. Around the same time, residents of the apartment building where Williams lived hearing a baby crying from apartment number 5, prompting them to notify the police. With this new information, officers obtained a warrant and conducted a thorough search of the apartment, where they found a live newborn baby girl. Brooke later revealed that Savannah had given her the baby. According to Brooke, Savannah had given birth to the baby just 2 days after she went missing. Savannah had confided in Brooke that she didn't want the baby and had asked for Brooke help in inducing labor. 2 days later, at 3 a.m., Savannah arrived at Brooke's home with the baby in her arms and handed the infant over to her. After Savannah was reported missing, the police took her baby into temporary custody. A few days later, a DNA test confirmed the baby's parentage, and Savannah's daughter was reunited with her father for 3 more days. The police and hundreds of local residents conducted a thorough search of the area. The police asked residents to carefully check their properties, including vacant apartments, dumpsters, and any other hiding for evidence. At a press conference on August 27, the police chief urged the public to help find Savannah. However, just a day later, a fisherman found her body wrapped in plastic on the Red River near Harwood. Savannah was identified by a tattoo on her leg. The police charged Brooke Cruz and William Hone with conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to kidnap, and providing false information. They admitted to the incident, with Brooke explaining that she initiated the fight by accusing Savannah of taking her cat without permission and mistreating it. The argument turned physical, and Brooke pushed Savannah, who fell and hit her head on the bathroom sink, losing consciousness. Brooke used a knife to remove the baby from Savannah, making a cut from hip to hip. As she did this, Savannah went consciousness. When questioned, Brooke confirmed that William was not aware of the plan beforehand. According to Brooke, William came home, entered the bathroom, and saw Savannah. He asked if Savannah was alive, and Brooke replied that she didn't know. William then left the bathroom briefly, returning in his underwear with a rope. He used the rope to strangle Savannah. After the murder, Brooke and William cleaned the floor and walls. Then stuffed Savannah's body into a bathroom closet. When the police arrived, Brooke attempted to remain calm. The officers searched the apartment, but their search was superficial due to the lack of a search warrant. As a result, they did not look in closets or dressers. According to Brooke, the child was under a blanket on the bed next to William during the searches. The child was calm and did not cry, so the child was not discovered. By the time of the third inspection on August 20th, Savannah's body had been moved to a dresser, and the infant was hidden in a suitcase. On August 21st, Brooke and William disposed of a dresser by taking it down the stairs, loading it into their Jeep Cherokee, and driving it to the river. William denied participating in the crime, but admitted to hiding a newborn baby girl and providing false information to police to cover up the crime. Both Brooke and William were set a bail of $2 million, which William thought was an unrealistic amount. Brooke was later sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Although William's participation in the crime was not proven during the trial, he was found guilty of kidnapping and sentenced to life in prison after pleading guilty. A cellmate of Brooke's, Jennifer Robinson, testified against Brooke, claiming that Brooke had confessed to strangling Savannah with a rope after discovering Savannah's affair with William. In May 2019, William was sent to prison. On October 7, 2019, he appealed to the Supreme Court. After a review of his sentence, Judge Olin, who had originally given William a life sentence, decided to give him the longest possible sentence allowed at the time, which was 20 years in prison. Since William had already spent 775 days in prison, he would have to serve more than 7 additional years. Savannah's baby, Hasley, is now 6 years old and attending kindergarten. The Savannah's parents regularly post updates on their public Facebook page about their granddaughter's life. The case has received significant attention, and Norberta believes that her daughter's disappearance was not taken seriously because Savannah was Native American. She thinks that if Savannah were white, her disappearance would have been treated more seriously. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lily James. Lily was born in the coastal town of Sainsbury, New South Wales, Australia in May 2002. She was the first child of the close-knit James family and was especially loved by her maternal grandmother, Barbara. Growing up, Lily spent much of her time by the ocean with her younger brother Max, where she developed a passion for swimming and an active lifestyle. Her father, a water polo coach at an Anglican girls' school in Hustville, encouraged her interest in the sport. Those who knew Lily remembered her as a friendly and outgoing person who excelled in her studies and was always willing to help those in need. Her well-rounded personality made her a standout student, and she was widely respected by her peers. With her impressive talent and dedication, Lily succeeded in multiple areas, including academia, sports, and community service. She was also an accomplished performer, participating in her school's theater and dance club. Eventually, Lily's talents caught the attention of organizers from the prestigious Woodford Folk Festival, one of Australia's largest annual events, attracting over 125,000 attendees from around the world. As part of the celebrations, Lily performed a unique monologue from William Shakespeare's Macbeth. Her performance showcased her impressive skills, charisma, and stage presence, earning her a standing ovation and the jury's approval. She achieved second place in the theater category, a remarkable achievement that earned her recognition and a significant prize. In 2018, Lily achieved another milestone when she passed her beginner's driving test. Her athletic talents also flourished, particularly in water polo, a sport she began competing in professionally, following in her father's footsteps. She won the title of swimming champion in the under-17 category, a feat that delighted her parents. By her final year of school, Lily had decided to pursue a career in sports, and in 2020, she enrolled at Sydney Technological University to study sports business management. A turning point in her life. In early 2021, she started a new chapter. To break up her college routine and gain teaching experience, she took a job as a water polo coach at St. Andrew's Cathedral School. Her youthful energy, vibrant personality, and passion for sports quickly won over her colleagues, the school administration, and the students she was coaching. The students looked up to her and tried to meet her high standards. In return, she sought to understand each student's unique needs and strengths. That's when she met Paul, the new cricket and hockey coach. His impressive skills and charismatic presence quickly made him the center of attention. As a part-time teacher at another school and a member of the University of New South Wales hockey team, Paul was a driven and accomplished young man. He was particularly popular among the female students and staff. However, opinions about him were divided. Some saw him as arrogant and stubborn, while others appreciated his positive qualities. Initially, Lily and Paul's interactions were friendly but brief, limited to exchanging greetings. Over time, their relationship evolved into something more. Lily's friends reported that Paul asked her out on a date, and she found it difficult to say no due to his charming smile. The date had a profound impact on both of them, leading to a decision to meet again. As Lily got to know Paul better, she began to develop feelings for him, unaware of his true nature. Her kindness and openness made her vulnerable to falling in love. Paul appeared to return her affection, frequently complimenting her, giving her flowers, and planning evenings together. They decided to keep their relationship a secret, especially from the students at school. Lily and her boyfriend, Paul, had agreed to keep their relationship private, adhering to the school's policy and Lily's personal preference for discretion. However, as time passed, rumors about their relationship began to circulate, evolving from hushed whispers to open discussions. When Lily discovered that Paul was the one who had revealed their relationship, she felt deeply hurt and betrayed. Paul's portrayal of her had also led to criticism and judgment from others, causing Lily to feel humiliated. As a result, she confronted Paul about his actions and ended their relationship. Despite Paul's subsequent attempts to apologize and reconcile, Lily remained resolute in her decision. She took some comfort in the fact that their relationship had been brief, allowing her to see Paul's true nature before things escalated further. Paul was born in 1999 in the Netherlands to a wealthy and influential family. When his father's job required a relocation to Australia in 2015, Paul and his family made the move. As an only child, Paul received excessive attention and care from his parents, which significantly contributed to his character development. Unfortunately, this upbringing led to Paul growing up with an entitled and self-centered attitude. Paul was a high-achieving student who excelled academically, athletically, and was physically fit. After moving to a new location, he attended St. Andrew's Cathedral School, where he joined the cricket team and quickly gained recognition and respect from his peers for his exceptional skills. He eventually became the team captain and actively participated in organizing extracurricular activities and festivals. While he was well-liked by many, particularly they who found him charming, some of his male peers were put off by his confidence and boasts about his ability to win over any girl. Despite this, Paul's charm and charisma earned him many admirers. After graduating in 2017, the school administration offered him a position as an assistant coach for cricket and hockey, which he gladly accepted. He quickly took on a leadership role and successfully managed these sections, feeling confident in his abilities. However, by early 2018, he surprisingly resigned and returned home with his family, citing unknown reasons for his departure. Back home, Paul decided to further his education and earned a master's degree in sports management. Paul had a conversation with old friends and mentioned that he had improved his coaching skills, which led to a job offer from his former employer. He returned to Australia and started working at the familiar school in early 2020. To reduce living expenses, Paul agreed to share an apartment with a friend in Kensington, a suburb of Sydney. Initially, they enjoyed each other's company, socializing after work. However, a few months later, they had a disagreement, and Paul decided to live alone. His parents, who he couldn't visit due to the pandemic, felt that Paul was lonely despite being busy and surrounded by people. They weren't aware of any romantic relationships in his life. By the summer of 2021, as Paul resumed his regular activities, people began to notice a change in his behavior and personality. He picked up where he left off in the sports world, regaining his status as a key player on the hockey team and continuing his active lifestyle, even featuring in promotional advertisements. At the same time, those who knew him observed emerging characteristics that were not present before. Uncontrollable outbursts of anger became a concern. Furthermore, rumors circulated within the school community about his unusual interest in his female students. He would often engage in flirtatious behavior with teenage girls, staring at them for extended periods, leaving them visibly uncomfortable and embarrassed. Paul's importance in the hockey team's progress to the Australian Hockey League finals was evident despite the turmoil in his personal life. His recent breakup with Lily was likely a significant blow to his ego. Unexpected, on October 26, 2023, at approximately 4:30 a.m., the principal of St. Andrew's Cathedral School in central Sydney sent an email to students and parents announcing the school's closure until the end of the week due to a critical incident. A tragedy occurred at the school, prompting a thorough investigation. On Thursday and Friday, a 24-hour consultation center was established in the school library to support those affected. Forensic teams meticulously searched the school building and surrounding area, gathering evidence. The gym was closed off, and the adjacent shower area was scheduled for demolition due to the disturbing discovery made there. The incident began to unfold when the body of a 20-year-old woman was found in the shower around midnight. She had been seen alive just hours earlier. The water polo coach had entered the shower but never emerged. Surveillance footage revealed that someone had followed her around 8 p.m., but the pursuer left the area alone, heading towards the school exit. A family member was later asked to identify the body due to severe facial damage. The victim was identified as Lily James. As the police delved deeper into the case, surveillance footage played a crucial role, and the prime suspect, a young man, was caught on camera multiple times. Investigations were launched into Paul and Lily's cell phone records, helping police track the suspect's last known location using GPS. They also sought to recover the victim's phone, hoping to uncover evidence through text messages that could shed light on the events leading up to the crime. After successfully locating the devices, the police reconstructed the sequence of events, revealing that Paul had purchased a hammer from a hardware store just days before the crime. It seemed he was consumed by anger toward the victim and had planned a confrontation. On the morning of October 25, Lily followed her routine, attending the university and then heading to her job in the afternoon. Unbeknownst to her, her ex-boyfriend had other plans. Paul rented a silver Lexus and drove to the school, avoiding the building since he had no classes scheduled. He waited in the car, patiently biding his time. Once the students cleared out, he walked into the gym, concealing a hammer under his jacket to avoid drawing attention. From this vantage point, Paul observed Lily's movements, lying in wait for the perfect moment to strike. When Lily finished her training session and decided to take a shower, Paul saw his chance and followed her. An argument erupted, and in the heat of the moment, Paul attacked Lily, striking her head with the hammer. According to the pathologists, the impact was fatal, and Lily died instantly, without suffering. After waiting for an hour, Paul collected Lily's belongings and left the building. He then drove to Diamond Bay, where he disposed of the weapon in a trash can. Security cameras captured footage of him at the reserve at 8:47 p.m. His last known location, as tracked by investigators, was the Gap, a cliff in the eastern Sydney suburb of Vaucluse. As the community was still reeling from the initial tragedy, another shocking event occurred. On October 27th, at 8 a.m., shopkeepers at Diamond Bay Reserve in Sydney's eastern suburbs made a disturbing discovery. A man's body was found just 11 miles away from the site of the first crime. A rescue team, including a bomb squad and Marine Corps personnel, was formed to retrieve the body. The body was recovered at 3:30 p.m. and taken for identification. Due to severe injuries, fingerprints were used to identify the individual. The victim was 24-year-old Paul, the same person who had been at the scene of the first crime. The investigation team faced a significant challenge in establishing a connection between the fatal incidents and uncovering the circumstances surrounding the events. The Gap is a notorious location with a history of suicides. Around 10 p.m., Paul used Lily's phone to send a message to her father, possibly revealing the location of her body. An hour later, the young man made a brief emergency call, but hung up quickly. When police arrived at the cliff, they found the personal belongings of Lily and Paul, but there was no sign of him. A rented car was parked nearby, suggesting that he may have taken his own life due to feelings of guilt or fear of facing the consequences of his actions. On October 26th, police launched a search operation for his body, using helicopters and boats to scour the coastline. The first day's efforts were unsuccessful, but the next day, a body was found on rocks in a nearby nature reserve. With Paul deceased, the case was closed, and his parents collected his body, opting to cremate it in Sydney. A meeting was subsequently arranged with Tim Watson-Monro, a renowned forensic psychologist with extensive experience in analyzing the behavior of both criminals and victims. Mr. Watson-Monro was asked to share his insights on the incident and analyze the behavior of the perpetrator, Paul. According to Mr. Watson-Monro, Paul's actions were characteristic of individuals with an inflated sense of self-importance who struggle to accept rejection. He believed that Paul committed the crime in a premeditated and calculating manner, showing no remorse for his actions. When asked about Paul's decision to end his own life, Mr. Watson-Monro provided an explanation. Mr. Watson portrays Paul as a self-centered individual with psychopathic traits. Some have compared the tragic events to the finale of Romeo and Juliet, but the story of Lily and Paul is unique and unfolds in a distinct way. A genuine love relationship cannot thrive with pride, dishonesty, and betrayal. Unfortunately, Paul failed to grasp this, leading him to overlook the value of the person beside him. His decision to prioritize his own wounded ego ultimately resulted in the loss of a bright and vibrant life. This not only caused lasting pain for Lily's family but also for Paul's own loved ones. Regrettably, his actions left a devastating impact on those around him. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Maria Munoz. Maria Munoz was born on January 25, 1989, to Marisol Rodriguez and Jorge Luis Munoz, and was one of 3 children. Growing up in a loving and vibrant household in Puerto Rico, Maria faced a devastating loss when her mother passed away at a young age. It was around this time that she met Joel Pellet. Despite this hardship, Maria took on the responsibility of caring for her siblings, Marisol Munoz and Peter Hernandez. Maria and Pellet, who was 11 years older, initially met in Puerto Rico, where Maria was born and raised. At the time, Pellet was a nursing student with ambitious dreams, and Maria was also pursuing a nursing career. Despite their age difference, they got married in 2011. Following their marriage, the couple relocated to Laredo, Texas, where Pellet secured a prestigious position as a nurse anesthetist at a local hospital, earning a substantial income. Their newfound financial stability enabled them to live a life of opulence, marked by luxury cars and extravagant vacations. Maria Munoz, a devoted mother, lived in Laredo, Texas, with her husband, Joel Pellet, 40, and their 2 young sons. After leaving her job, she dedicated herself to caring for her family full-time. Maria adored her boys and prioritized their needs, taking them to the park daily and reading to them before bedtime. Although she savored every moment at home, she also made time for her passion, playing the piano. Despite her contentment, Maria held on to her aspiration of furthering her education and resuming her nursing career. Pellet's relationship seemed perfect, but beneath the surface, a different story emerged. After his second son's birth in 2018, people noticed changes in his behavior. He lost weight, gained muscle, and became flirtatious with other women. He stopped posting family photos, instead sharing solo pictures, giving the impression of a single, carefree life. Pellet's colleagues noticed his growing closeness to surgical nurse Janet Arando. As time passed, it became clear they were having a secretive affair. In 2020, Maria found airline tickets Pellet bought for himself and Janet to travel to Europe. This discovery left Maria shattered, feeling betrayed and devastated by their decade-long facade. She sought a therapist's help to cope with her emotional turmoil and was prescribed medication to support her mental health struggles. Around this time, Maria started writing in journals to cope with her thoughts and feelings. As tensions between Pellet and Maria increased, a confrontation occurred on September 19, 2020, when Maria visited Janet's house and found Pellet's car parked in the driveway. Maria confronted Pellet, forcing him to choose between her and Janet. Pellet chose Janet, leading to an argument that prompted Janet to call the police. However, Maria and Pellet had left before the police arrived. Later, the police called Maria while she was in the car with Pellet, and they could hear him yelling at her in the background. Once they got home, Pellet's anger escalated, and he punched a hole in Maria's car windshield, demonstrating his intense anger. The next morning, on September 20th, Maria sent Pellet a text message, stating her intention to hire a lawyer to resolve their situation. However, Pellet responded, suggesting they handle the matter without lawyers, as he believed it would be too expensive. Just hours after their text conversation, Pellet appeared to have a change of heart. He emailed Maria, expressing his profound sadness and inner turmoil. In the email, he conveyed his desire to have a genuine and calm conversation with Maria, free from argument. Maria replied, and they agreed to meet the following evening, around 5 p.m. on Monday, September 21st. Before meeting him, Maria was extremely nervous and messaged her friend Yasmin Martinez about the planned meeting. Unfortunately, the encounter ended in a terrifying way. The next day, September 22nd, 2020, Pellet frantically called 911, saying his wife might have taken prescription pills and was no longer breathing. Officer DEA Cruz arrived at Pellet's house around 1:40 a.m., with his body cam recording the entire scene. He found Pellet at the top of the stairs, near the main bedroom, where he was still wearing his green hospital scrubs and performing CPR on his wife. Their 2 sons were asleep in nearby rooms. Once the paramedics arrived, they took over CPR efforts on Maria. Officer asked Pellet about pills Maria took. Pellet fetched a bottle with clonazepam prescription from the bathroom, but it was in his name, not Maria's. The bottle was unusually back in the cabinet. Body cam footage showed Pellet pocketing the pill container. DEA Cruz suspected he concealed something. A needle catheter on the stairs and a medical bag with syringes outside a clinical setting raised more questions. Pellet informed the officers that Maria had been battling severe depression lately, which had taken a toll on her mental health. According to him, her desperation to deal with her overwhelming emotions led her to take the pills as a last resort. Despite efforts, Maria was pronounced dead at 3:58 a.m. Pellet was questioned, explaining he and Maria had a conversation, became intimate, and he took a shower. When he returned, Maria was unresponsive and not breathing. Officer notices Pellet's suspicious behavior, excessive sweating and evasive answers, contrasting with others. This raises suspicions, and Sergeant Lismata takes him in for questioning. Upon arrival, Pellet was left alone in the interrogation room for a period before an officer entered. Unbeknownst to Pellet, his actions were being recorded on video. When the officers reviewed the footage, they were shocked to see Pellet's sudden, extreme behavior. He began screaming, crying, hitting the walls, and throwing furniture around the room. His loud, out-of-control outburst caused a stir among people in the hallway and nearby rooms, who were frightened by the commotion coming from his room. Sergeant Louis Mata spoke with Pellet at 4 a.m. Pellet confessed to having an affair with Janet, whom he'd left the family home for 5 months prior. Maria knew about it. Pellet visited the family home, they talked and became intimate. He gave her clonazepam for anxiety and depression, but didn't know how much she took. He found her unresponsive 10 minutes later. After questioning, Maria's autopsy was performed just 8 hours after her death. This timely autopsy allowed for detection of any substances in her stomach contents. The results revealed a surprise: no pill fragments, but a small, red pinprick mark on her elbow, suggesting an injection. This finding shifted the investigation's focus. Maria's journal, found by investigators, revealed her anxiety and depression struggles. Her writings exposed her deep love for her husband and desire to save their family despite his infidelity. Entries disclosed her husband's abuse, her grief, and her longing to escape sadness. One plea read, "I don't want to be sad anymore. Bring me laughter, bring me peace, bring me happiness again." The day before Maria Munoz's untimely death, she wrote in her journal, revealed her desire to live and move forward with her life. There was no hint of suicide or plans to end her life. As a result, after reviewing her journal, investigators initially ruled out suicide as a possibility. They needed more information to understand what had really happened. Sergeants Mata and Cruz received toxicology test results contradicting Pellet's claim about Maria having clonazepam. Instead, the tests revealed 7 surgical drugs in her system: morphine, Demerol, Versed, propofol, ketamine, Lian, and Naren. Notably, propofol and ketamine are sedatives and pain management drugs, typically used intravenously during operations. The discovery of propofol in Maria's body was the most startling revelation for the investigators. Given his profession as a nurse anesthetist, they suspected that Pellet would have had access to the drug. Dr. Hunzinger, who had worked with Pellet and was familiar with propofol, was shocked by the unusually high amount found in Maria's system, the highest he had ever seen. This led the doctors to strongly suspect that propofol was the direct cause of Maria's death, as Pellet would have known the correct dosage to sedate someone or cause an overdose. Furthermore, a small mark on Maria's arm suggested that she may have been injected with a substance. The investigators believed they had sufficient evidence to arrest Pellet for his wife's murder, based on the toxicological report, his suspicious behavior, and Maria's journal. An arrest warrant was quickly obtained, and DEA Cruz promptly apprehended Pellet, who offered no resistance, almost as if he had anticipated his arrest. Pellet was then taken to the police station, marking the beginning of a new phase in the investigation as law enforcement officials prepared to question him further about the events surrounding Maria's tragic death. The trial began on March 21, 2023, with both the prosecution and defense presenting their arguments. The prosecution team, comprising only women and dubbed Maria's team, built a strong case against Pellet by using Maria Munoz's journal entries. This approach aimed to showcase Maria's personality to the jury, highlighting her qualities as a wife and mother. Through her journals, the prosecutors painted a picture of Maria as a caring, intelligent, and excellent mother, conveying her lively spirit to the jurors. During the trial, prosecutors suspected that Pellet drugged Maria by putting substances in her drink, making her sleepy. After she became unconscious, they believed he injected propofol into her arm. Prosecutors also thought Pellet deliberately delayed calling 911 so that responders would be unable to rescue Maria when they arrived. The journals helped prosecutors understand the challenges Maria faced, strengthening their resolve to seek justice in her case. Pellet's lawyer, Roberto Bali, argued that his client wanted to reconcile with wife Maria Munoz before her death, citing uncertain cause of death and insufficient evidence. Bali noted Pellet gave Maria a drug to reverse overdoses on the night she died, and both struggled with addiction, with no signs of force or coercion. After investigating Maria's social circles, friends, and family, it became clear that she was not a drug addict. It was evident that Pellet was the only person who could have provided her with the substantial quantity of propofol found in her system. Additionally, authorities convinced Pellet's girlfriend, Janet Avendano, a surgical nurse, to testify against him. She revealed that Pellet had confided in her, admitting that he gave Maria something to calm her down. Avendano also confirmed that Pellet had brought drugs, including propofol, home from work. The jury reached a verdict in under an hour, following a 9-day trial. On March 30, 2023, the jury found Pellet guilty of Maria's murder. He was subsequently sentenced to life in prison on April 27, 2023, plus an additional 10 years and a $10,000 fine for tampering with evidence. Joel Pellet is currently imprisoned for life at a Texas Department of Criminal Justice facility, serving time for his cruel actions. His imprisonment serves as a reminder that criminals will be held accountable and that Maria's memory will be honored through the pursuit of truth and justice. The reason behind Maria's murder is still unclear, but according to the prosecution, Joel Pellet killed his wife to end their marriage and start a new life with his girlfriend, Janet Avendano. In the end, justice prevailed, and the verdict ensured that Pellet was punished for his crime. The jury's decision brings some closure to this tragic case, sending a clear message that such brutal acts will not go unpunished. The conviction highlights the importance of upholding justice and serves as a warning to those who commit similar crimes that they will face the full force of the law. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Michelle Davis. Michelle Ann Cosner Davis was born in Iowa on December 15, 1966. By 2008, at 41 years old, she lived in Des Moines with her 3 kids. Her divorce was nearly finalized and she was eager to start anew. Michelle had already taken steps towards independence, moving into her own apartment and obtaining a restraining order against her husband, Randy Davis. The years leading up to the divorce had been marked by tension and strain within the family. Michelle was a friendly and adventurous person who had a passion for motorcycles. At her job as a secretary for a trucking company, she was well respected and commanded authority. On Thursday, September 11, 2008, Michelle was at work, and her co-workers noticed a significant change in her demeanor after her husband left her. She seemed to have shed a burden that had been weighing her down for years. In a good mood, Michelle wrapped up all her tasks and left the office around 4:30 p.m. After a short time, eyewitnesses started calling 911 to report a serious accident on Interstate 235. They told the operator that a Mercury Sable car had flipped over and a woman was still strapped into the driver's seat with her seatbelt. Tragically, the woman was unconscious, and despite the efforts of the paramedics who arrived at the scene, she could not be saved. The woman who lost her life was identified as Michelle Davis. After arriving at the accident scene, the police initially concluded that Michelle lost control of her vehicle, leading to the crash. However, they reversed this theory just a day later. Forensic experts subsequently determined that Michelle's death was not caused by a head injury sustained during the rollover, but rather by a gunshot wound to the head. The bullet was extracted and sent for analysis, with the hope of tracing the perpetrator. The investigators on this case were dealing with something entirely unprecedented. As they awaited the ballistic examination results, Local authorities took proactive measures to safeguard the public. They considered the possibility that Michelle might have been a random target, not premeditated. This raised the alarming prospect of a shooter who wouldn't stop at just one victim. Given the high volume of traffic on the interstate, any driver could potentially become the next target for the unstable perpetrator. It was essential to crack the case quickly, and so the police increased their patrols throughout the city. When detectives realized Michelle's death was not an accident, they revisited the crime scene to try to determine the shooter's whereabouts and if they had left any clues behind. Unfortunately, their efforts yielded nothing. The police failed to recover the cartridge case or any other evidence that could aid the investigation. To make matters worse, the initial assumption that Michelle was a car accident victim led the traffic services to clear the site, which meant that even if there were any evidence, it was likely destroyed and irretrievable by the time the truth came to light. Despite these setbacks, the detectives didn't give up and pinned their hopes on reviewing the traffic camera recordings. These days, CCTV cameras often prove instrumental in helping the police crack cases, and this one was no exception. With the traffic camera recordings at their disposal, the investigators dove right in. First, they needed to locate the recording from the camera nearest the crime scene and rewind it to when the 911 calls started coming in. Half an hour later, the investigators finally found what they were looking for. The video showed Michelle's car upside down, but the footage was poor quality, resembling a slideshow with separate alternating pictures and intervals in between. As a result, the investigators only had a few usable shots, none of which revealed what led to Michelle's car rolling over. This was a disappointing development, as the investigators thought they had finally stumbled upon a crucial clue, only to be left with false hopes. The police still needed to review the remaining camera recordings and search for potential eyewitnesses. Meanwhile, the investigator handling the Michelle Davis case visited her family to break the news that her death was not an accident, as initially thought. This revelation left Michelle's family in shock. Michelle's mother, Patty, had passed away before her. Her father, Michael Lee Cosner, was now grieving the loss of his second daughter. His first daughter, Cheryl Sue Cosner, Michelle's older sister, died in 1965 at just 1 year old. 43 years later, Michael Cosner was facing the unbearable loss of another child. Losing one's children is the ultimate tragedy for any parent. Michelle's family informed the investigator that she had been going through a series of changes in her life, but they did not think she had any financial issues. However, they suspected that the one person who could potentially harm Michelle was her estranged husband, Randy Davis, particularly since their divorce was nearly finalized, and she had obtained a restraining order against him. Meanwhile, another detective interviewed Michelle's colleagues at her workplace and discovered that she was having a close relationship with a coworker named Matt Jorgensen, following her separation from her husband. According to Michelle's friend, the feelings between Michelle and Matt were mutual. Since Michelle was still in the process of divorcing Randy Davis, she and Matt decided to keep their relationship private, only sharing it with a select few colleagues and close friends. The police now had two potential suspects in their investigation, Randy Davis and Matt Jorgensen. However, all attempts to contact Randy were met with failure, as every time they called him, the call went straight to voicemail. On the other hand, the investigators were able to meet with Matt, where they questioned him about his whereabouts on the day Michelle died. Matt was cooperative, openly admitting to having had a romantic relationship with Michelle. He claimed that they never had any arguments or fights. Matt was visibly shaken by Michelle's death and provided every detail of his activities on the day she died. After verifying his alibi, the police were able to eliminate him as a suspect. The ballistic examination results revealed that the crime was committed with a .22 caliber rifle. According to experts, the shot was fired at close range. Given that the incident occurred while Michelle was driving on the interstate, police suspected that the shooter was likely in another vehicle that was driving alongside Michelle's car. At the same time, a new suspect emerged in the case. The police received a tip-off from an insurance company claiming that Michelle's brother, Todd, was seeking payment under her life insurance policy. While insurance-related murders aren't rare, the question was whether this case fit the pattern. Could Todd have killed his sister for the payout? To investigate, the detective visited Todd's house to ask some questions. As the detective pressed Todd about his whereabouts at the time of Michelle's death, it dawned on Todd that he was a suspect. Todd recounted his activities on the day his sister died. He explained that their family was struggling financially and couldn't afford a decent funeral, which is why he contacted the insurance company. He needed the money for Michelle's funeral expenses. The police verified Todd's alibi and discovered that he was in a different part of the city when Michelle died, ruling him out as the shooter. However, Todd still gave the police information that allowed them to find another suspect, Michelle's stepson, Josh. When Michelle married Randy, he already had a son from a previous marriage. At the time of Michelle's death, Josh was already an adult. He was a Marine who returned home from the Army shortly before someone fatally wounded Michelle on the road. Josh knew how to handle weapons, which made him one of the suspects. The police started analyzing whether Josh had motives for committing this crime. The police received a new lead when a woman reported seeing a suspicious vehicle on Interstate 235 at the same time Michelle's car crashed. She described the vehicle as a red Ford F-150 pickup truck, driven erratically, swerving between lanes, as if the driver was chasing someone. The driver was an adult white male wearing a baseball cap, but the woman couldn't provide any additional details. The new information appeared significant, so the investigators decided to investigate further. They re-examined the traffic camera footage, this time focusing on whether a red pickup truck was in the vicinity. The woman's tip proved accurate. The footage showed a red pickup truck tailing Michelle from her workplace. However, the poor video quality prevented the police from identifying the driver's face or the truck's license plates. After reviewing additional camera recordings, the investigators determined that the red pickup truck had been following Michelle's exact route, mirroring her every move. The similarity was unlikely to be a coincidence. Furthermore, as Michelle approached the location of her death, the pickup truck was hot on her heels. This evidence hinted that the perpetrator may have fired the fatal shot while driving, and several suspects were being considered. Detectives quickly learned that Randy Davis, Michelle's husband, owned a red pickup truck that matched the description of the one seen near the crime scene. They immediately went to his house to investigate. Although Randy was not at home, his son Josh, a Marine with professional weapons training, was present. Josh told detectives that on the day of Michelle's death, he and his sister had gone shopping, returned home, and spent the evening watching TV. He also mentioned that his father, Randy, arrived home around 5:30 p.m. that day. However, detectives found Josh's alibi unconvincing and suspected that he might have a motive for the crime. Michelle's decision to pursue half the house value in the divorce proceedings had likely upset Josh, who stood to lose a portion of his inheritance. While these suspicions seemed plausible, there was no physical evidence to support them, and without evidence, an arrest and charges were impossible. While Michelle's family was preparing for her funeral, the police were actively searching for new leads in the case. They visited all the shops and gas stations along the route from her workplace to the location where her body was found, hoping to obtain additional surveillance footage. A few miles from the company where Michelle worked, the police discovered crucial footage at a store that proved to be a significant breakthrough. The store's surveillance camera had captured part of the parking lot, and on the day of Michelle's death, September 11, 2008, it showed a red pickup truck belonging to Randy Davis parking at the entrance around 4 p.m. Although the footage revealed the driver getting out of the truck and entering the store, the poor quality made it impossible for investigators to determine whether the driver was Randy or his son Josh. Further analysis of the footage revealed that over the next 30 minutes, the pickup truck returned to the store several times, but the driver remained in the vehicle. The last time the pickup truck was seen near the store was when Michelle left work, which raised even more questions for the investigators. The police, unable to identify a suspect, reached out to Randy Davis, who eventually made contact and came to the police station. There, the investigators informed him of his rights and asked about his activities on September 11th. Randy mentioned his difficult divorce from Michelle, his wife of 17 years, and claimed to have been at work that day. When questioned about his arrival time at home, Randy hesitated before stating he got home at 3:45 p.m., which contradicted the surveillance footage and his son Josh's testimony, who said his father arrived around 5:30 p.m. The investigators then revealed to Randy that Michelle had died from a gunshot wound, not a car crash, information that had not been previously disclosed. Randy showed little reaction to this news, and when the police asked when he last saw Michelle, he requested a lawyer, ending the conversation. Due to the lack of significant evidence, including the murder weapon, the investigation had no choice but to release him. On September 15, 2008, 4 days after Michelle's death, her family and friends, including Randy Davis, gathered for her funeral. Randy tried to show that her death was a heavy loss for him, even bursting into tears at some point. Help arrived from an unexpected quarter when Josh Davis walked into the police station, accompanied by his lawyer, and expressed his desire to make a statement. Josh claimed that upon returning home from his sister's house, he found his father Randy waiting for him, holding a gun. Randy warned Josh that it would be better for him to stay back, and Josh grasped the implication that his father was trying to prevent him from entering the house, but ultimately failed to do so. Randy drove into the garage and confessed to Josh that he had shot Michelle. He was upset because his wife was filing for divorce and suing him for part of their property, which he refused to accept. On September 11, 2008, Randy took drastic action. He parked his red pickup truck outside the store where Michelle worked and waited for her to leave. Randy drove past the store multiple times, worried that he might miss his opportunity. This is why he appeared on the store's CCTV footage several times after Michelle left work. Eventually, he followed her and waited for the perfect moment to strike. When the time came, he rolled down the passenger side window and fired. Based on Josh's testimony, the police arrested Randy Davis for the murder of Michelle, and he was initially charged with first-degree murder. However, prior to the trial, Randy pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of second-degree deprivation of life in exchange for a shorter sentence. As a result, in 2010, Randy Davis, then 53 years old, was sentenced to 50 years in prison. By pleading guilty, Randy avoided a trial. Michelle's brother, Todd Kozner, expressed mixed emotions about the outcome. While we may not have received full justice without a trial, we did get what we wanted. An admission of guilt from Randy, Todd said. He emphasized the devastating impact Randy's actions had on their family. Randy was like family to me for 17 years, and I cared deeply for him. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Kira Steger. Kira Steger, a 30-year-old store clerk, worked at Delia's in the Mall of America. She was dedicated to her job and never missed a shift, so when she failed to show up for work on February 23, 2013, her coworkers became worried. They attempted to contact her, but she didn't respond to their calls or texts, prompting them to report her missing to the police. Born on November 19, 1982, in Des Plaines, Illinois, Kira was the daughter of Marcy and Jay Steger, who described her as lively, dedicated, and sweet. She had previously worked at Wet Seal before moving to Delia's, both located in the Mall of America. Kira's coworkers were not only her friends but also part of her extended family. Kira had a unique gift for identifying people's hidden strengths, and she had planned a promising future for herself, one that seemed bright and serene. However, all her dreams came to an abrupt end when she mysteriously disappeared. On Thursday, February 21st, 2013, Kira worked a shift. According to her coworkers, she was in high spirits and had plans to dine at a nice restaurant with her husband, Jeffrey Trevino, after her shift ended. The two had met 3 years prior and quickly developed a romantic connection, leading to their marriage. By all appearances, Kira and Jeffrey were a happy, stable married couple. However, when Kira failed to show up for work 2 days later, on Saturday, February 23rd, her co-workers were alarmed. This was unusual behavior for someone who was typically punctual, strict with herself and others, and adhered to her schedule. Unable to reach Kira, her co-workers contacted Jeffrey, but he claimed to have no knowledge of his wife's whereabouts. Jeffrey reported that Kira had left their house the previous morning and hadn't returned since. Although this wasn't entirely unusual, as Kira sometimes stayed away for a day or two at a friend's or relative's place without warning, the bad weather that day did raise some concerns. The heavy snowfall might have caused her to get stuck, and her cell phone battery could have run out. Still, with no news from Kira, Jeffrey filed a missing persons report and contacted her family that same day. Her family was shocked and devastated by her sudden disappearance. Detectives promptly began their investigation, a standard procedure in cases like this. They started by interviewing the spouse and searching the immediate area. The detectives went to Jeffrey's home to talk to him. Jeffrey told them that on Thursday, he and Kira had planned to spend some time together. They had dinner, chatted, went bowling, and eventually left the mall. According to Jeffrey, they went straight home, as Kira wanted to watch a movie. Jeffrey also informed the detectives that Kira left their house the next day, Friday, around 8:30 a.m. to attend a work event where her presence was required. He wasn't alarmed by her occasional disappearances, although he didn't know her whereabouts or who she was with, as this was not unusual behavior for her. Jeffrey revealed that he and his wife Kira had been experiencing relationship issues for a few months, but he didn't consider it a major concern, believing that all families have minor disagreements. When the detective asked if Kira might be staying with someone, suggesting she could have had an affair, Jeffrey dismissed the idea, stating that he had already asked Kira about it and she had denied it. Jeffrey emphasized that he genuinely loves and trusts his wife. The investigators shared the information they gathered about Kira and her car with the on-duty patrol units. The detectives also visited the Mall of America to verify the accuracy of Jeffrey's statement and potentially uncover more clues. Mall of America, one of the world's largest shopping malls, is located in Bloomington and boasts 520 stores, theme parks, an oceanarium, movie theaters, a golf course, and many other attractions. Given its massive size, it's no surprise that the mall is equipped with numerous security cameras. When the detectives reviewed the security footage from February 21st, they saw that Kira had left work at her usual time. The footage didn't show anything unusual, and Jeffrey's alibi checked out. He had met Kira after work, and they had spent some time together at the mall before heading to the parking lot and driving off. There was no sign of any argument between them, and it seemed like they had a normal evening. The waiting game was agonizing, and with each passing day, the anxiety about Kira's safety grew. With no news from her and exhausted from waiting, Kira's family decided to take matters into their own hands and traveled to Bloomington to assist with the investigation. They printed flyers with Kira's picture and posted them around town, handing them out to passersby in an effort to draw attention to the search. They knew they couldn't just sit idle. They had to do everything possible to find their loved one. While Kira's family was distributing leaflets, investigators continued to question the couple's neighbors. They noticed a surveillance camera on one of the houses, which rotated sideways and captured Kira and Jeffrey's home. The officers asked the homeowner to provide a copy of the footage, hoping to find some clues. Meanwhile, records from Kira's cell phone company arrived, providing a new lead. According to the records, Kira had a relationship with Ryan Wendt, who was the manager of the store chain where she worked. They had an intense and frequent correspondence. The police discovered that Ryan had left the state around the same time Kira disappeared, and he was traveling in his car towards Colorado while a search for Kira was underway. Ryan became a key figure in the investigation, not only because of his romantic relationship with Kira, but also because he had left the state at the same time she vanished. Whether this was a coincidence or something more, the investigators needed to find out. Regardless, the detectives were able to get in touch with Ryan, and he agreed to be questioned in Colorado. During the questioning, he said that the last time he had contact with Kira was when he was driving through South Dakota, and they exchanged text messages. These messages were sent just before Kira vanished. The detectives examined the timing of the text messages and discovered that Kira was communicating with her new lover at the same time she was having dinner with her husband, Jeffrey. It was obvious from their conversation that Kira was growing more and more distant from Jeffrey. Ryan's phone was analyzed to track his location in relation to cell towers, and his credit card statements were reviewed. The evidence suggested he was out of state on the night in question and had no connection to Kira's disappearance. As a result, he was cleared and removed from the suspect list. An examination of the text message timestamps showed that Kira was still communicating with Ryan even after arriving home with her husband. However, their conversation ceased at 11:44 p.m., and Kira's phone has been inactive since then. Meanwhile, a different team of investigators prepared to analyze the video footage from the surveillance camera installed at Kira's neighbor's house. The camera captured a wide area of the street, panning left and right, but its rapid movement made observation challenging. Whenever an investigator thought they spotted something suspicious, the camera would quickly swing to the other side, making it hard to focus. As a result, Jeffrey and Kira's house was only visible for a brief few seconds, caught in a quick glimpse as the camera panned to the right. Jeffrey claimed that after dinner and bowling, he and Kira went home, watched a movie, and then went to bed. However, video footage showed that at around 2 a.m., Kira's car backed into their yard. Although the poor quality of the footage and the camera's constant motion made it difficult to determine exactly what was happening. The car soon drove away from their house. According to Jeffrey, he had driven Kira's car that night because she had asked him to fill up the gas tank before her commute the next day. Surprisingly, his alibi checked out, as he was indeed seen at the gas station around 3:30 in the morning. However, after leaving the gas station, he didn't return home, instead heading towards the highway. His destination remained unknown. The neighbor's camera did not capture Jeffrey's return home, but this does not necessarily mean he didn't come back. The camera was constantly rotating, so it's possible that it was facing the other direction when Jeffrey arrived. Upon closer examination of the footage, investigators noted that Kira's Chevrolet was seen driving away at 9:21 a.m. However, unfortunately, the footage did not provide a clear view of who was driving the vehicle. A police report was filed on Saturday, February 23rd, after Kira was reported missing. On Monday, February 25th, the police received a call about a suspicious vehicle found near the shopping center where Kira worked. The vehicle was parked in one of the two multi-story parking lots, and security guards had noticed it had been there for several days. They requested a truck to remove it. The tow truck driver proceeded to examine the car before picking it up and spotted suspicious-looking red smudges on the trunk lid, then called the police. That vehicle turned out to be Kira's white Chevy. There wasn't that much blood, just a few small stains, but it was there, and that was a very bad sign. Kira's purse was found in her abandoned car, containing divorce court forms that appeared to have been downloaded from the internet. Behind the car, a small, dark item lying in the snow caught the investigators' attention. Upon closer inspection, they discovered a rolled-up trunk mat with dark-colored stains on the reverse side. DNA testing confirmed that the stains were Kira Steger's blood. With a heavy heart, the investigators realized that Kira was likely deceased. This devastating discovery was a cruel shock to her family and friends, who had lost their last hope of seeing her again. Many questions now plagued their minds. How did Kira die? Did she suffer? And who could have harbored such resentment towards her as to take her life? The absence of Kira's body only added to their anguish, making it even harder to come to terms with their sorrow. The detectives' primary focus shifted to identifying the individual who abandoned the vehicle in the parking lot. After leaving the house at 9:21 a.m., the car was captured on camera at the mall approximately 20 minutes later. Although there were no cameras in the lot where the car was found, a nearby camera monitored the path leading to it. Upon reviewing the footage, detectives noticed a hooded man appearing in the video a few minutes after the white Chevrolet entered the parking lot. Given the cold weather, the hoodie didn't seem unusual, but the detectives wanted to track his movements. The footage showed the hooded man crossing the street, engaging in a brief conversation with a taxi driver at the stand, and then getting into the taxi and driving away. The police easily identified the company that owned the taxis parked in the shopping center's parking lot. By analyzing the time the hooded man interacted with the driver, they quickly determined the license plate number of the specific vehicle involved. Since all the cabs were equipped with GPS tracking devices, the police were able to trace the hooded man's journey, which ended a block away from Kira and Jeffrey's house. He got out of the car after paying cash, and the taxi left the neighborhood. The same camera that had previously recorded part of Kira and Jeffrey's home caught a cab on film. 2 minutes into the footage, a man wearing a hooded sweatshirt with a distinctive white logo entered the frame. Although the low-quality footage made it difficult to make out his face, the logo on his hoodie stood out. As the investigators continued to review the footage, they saw the hooded man walk into the house where Kira and Jeffrey lived. Given that Kira was missing, it was highly likely that the hooded man was Jeffrey. After obtaining a search warrant, law enforcement officers went to the house. At first, the house seemed ordinary and unremarkable, but a closer inspection revealed a more sinister scene. In the bedroom, the criminalists found dark red stains on the wall beside the bed and around 100 similar stains on the mattress. It was clear that the room had been recently rearranged and cleaned in an attempt to conceal evidence. When the forensics team used luminol on the floor carpet, it revealed a significant amount of blood stains that were not visible to the naked eye. These stains started in the bedroom and continued to the other side of the house. The forensic analysis confirmed that the blood belonged to Kira, which further led investigators to believe that she was no longer alive. In addition to searching the interior of the house, the police also inspected Jeffrey's car. Although they didn't find any blood or signs of a struggle inside the vehicle, they did discover something noteworthy. A gas station receipt was found in the car, which showed that the purchase was made an hour and 40 minutes before Kira's car was abandoned in the mall parking lot, and the payment was made using Jeffrey's card. The detectives then went to the gas station to review the security footage. The footage showed Jeffrey filling up his car and then going inside to withdraw cash from an ATM. This video provided a clear view of Jeffrey's face and revealed a logo on his jacket, similar to the one seen on the man in the earlier footage, located in the chest area. Based on this recording and all evidence found in the house, 39-year-old Jeffrey Trevino was arrested. He was taken to the station for questioning and became the main and only suspect. From the interrogation room, Jeffrey contacted his attorney, who advised him to exercise his right to remain silent. Although the police had sufficient evidence to charge him, the most crucial evidence of his guilt would be Kira's body. There was no doubt that Kira was dead. The police, along with Kira's family and volunteers, spent months searching for her. In late March, as the snowdrifts began to clear, a strange bag was discovered by volunteers near the roadside at Keller Lake, which is just a few miles from Trevino's house. The police were called, and upon inspection, the bag was found to contain a bloodied pillow, a shirt, and a bra. The forensics team was able to link the discovery to Kira, as her DNA was detected on the items. Although the lake was still partially frozen, which made searching it difficult, divers were able to survey the water body. However, they did not find any remains in the lake. The area surrounding the lake was thoroughly searched multiple times using 4 trained search dogs, but no evidence of Kira's whereabouts was found. Over 2 months later, on May 8, 2013, the St. Paul Police Department received a chilling call. The caller reported seeing what appeared to be a dead body in the Mississippi River. The body retrieved by police from the water was confirmed to be Kira Steger. The autopsy revealed that she had suffered severe, blunt force trauma to her forehead and a fractured left index finger. Due to the advanced state of decomposition, the medical examiners could not determine the exact cause of death. Investigators worked to piece together the events leading up to Kira's death and its aftermath. Their theory was that upon returning home, Jeffrey discovered Kira texting someone else. When she refused to show him the messages, he forcibly took her phone, breaking her finger in the process. Enraged by the romantic exchange, Jeffrey allegedly snapped, taking Kira's life and then attempting to conceal the evidence of his crime. Jeffrey drove Kira's car to their house, put Kira's body in the trunk, then stopped at a gas station before driving to the river, where he got rid of the body. Afterwards, he drove back home, throwing away the bag containing Kira's pillow and clothes on the way. The next morning, he went to another gas station, withdrew cash from an ATM, knowing he would need it to pay for a taxi after leaving Kira's car in the mall's parking lot. In October 2013, a jury found 39-year-old Jeffrey Trevino guilty, ruling that his actions were not premeditated and that the crime resulted from a sudden and intense argument sparked by Kira's infidelity. Before the sentence was announced, Kira's family expressed their grief and outrage, with her sister calling Trevino a calculating criminal who didn't deserve mercy, and her mother saying he had callously dumped her daughter's body into the country's most polluted waterway. In November 2013, Jeffrey Trevino received a 27.5-year prison sentence, becoming eligible for parole in 2031.